The promise that crossed two continents. The rain fell softly over a quiet village in southeastern Nigeria, drumming against the rusted roof of a small family home. Inside, 23-year-old Amara Okoye sat beside her mother's bed, gently holding her fragile hand. Amara was breathtakingly beautiful. Her rich, deep ebony complexion glowed warmly even in the dim light of the kerosene lamp. Her expressive brown eyes carried kindness beyond her years, while her slim, graceful figure reflected both elegance and quiet strength. Though life had never been easy, she wore dignity like a crown. Her mother smiled weakly. "Amara, I'm here, Mama. I need you to promise me something." Tears immediately gathered in Amara's eyes. "Please don't talk like that. You're gonna get better." Her mother slowly shook her head. "There's a promise that has waited for more than 25 years. She reached beneath her pillow and brought out a small wooden box, worn by time. Inside was an old silver necklace, a faded photograph of a smiling young Korean man standing beside her mother, and a sealed envelope with elegant handwriting. On the front were the words, "Welcome to Afrokorea Seoul Stories, where unforgettable African and Korean love stories come alive." If you enjoy emotional romance, inspiring journeys, and breathtaking plot twists, don't forget to subscribe and join our family. To be opened only by my daughter when she is ready to travel to Seoul. Amara stared at the envelope in confusion. "Seoul? Korea?" Her mother nodded. "Everything you need to know is inside. Promise me you'll go." "Mama, I've never even left Nigeria." "You must." A single tear rolled down her mother's cheek. Some promises are bigger than fear. Amara tightly held her mother's hand. "I promise." Her mother smiled peacefully. For the first time in years, she looked relieved. But neither of them knew that this promise would pull Amara into a world of unimaginable wealth, dangerous secrets, and a love story that neither destiny nor distance could stop. Far away in Seoul, Kang Min-jae, the cold and disciplined heir to one of Korea's most powerful business empires, stood alone on the top floor of his company's headquarters. Employees called him the man without a heart. He trusted no one. He smiled at no one. And he had absolutely no idea that somewhere, thousands of kilometers away, a young Nigerian woman had just made a promise that would change both of their lives forever. The same night, a black luxury sedan sped through the rain-soaked streets of Seoul. Inside, a nervous older man repeatedly looked at an old photograph. It showed a young African woman standing beside a smiling Korean university student. The driver glanced into the rear-view mirror. "Sir, are we really going to keep searching after all these years?" The old man looked out at the rain. "We have no choice." He gently touched the photograph. She promised she would send her daughter one day. Then he whispered words that sent a chill through the silent car. "I think that day has finally come." The morning sun rose gently over the quiet village, but there was no peace inside Amara's heart. Only hours had passed since she buried her beloved mother. The small wooden house that had once been filled with laughter now felt painfully silent. Every corner reminded her of the woman who had sacrificed everything to raise her. As relatives slowly left, Amara sat alone beneath the old mango tree behind the house. Her trembling fingers rested on the sealed envelope. For several minutes, she couldn't bring herself to open it. Then she remembered her mother's final words. Some promises are bigger than fear. Taking a deep breath, she carefully broke the seal. Inside were 3 items: a handwritten letter, a Korean business card, and an old bank document with a Seoul address. She unfolded the letter. "My dearest Amara, if you are reading this, it means I have gone to be with the Lord. Please don't cry for too long. I lived a beautiful life because I had you. 26 years ago, while studying in Seoul, I saved the life of a young Korean student named Kang Ji-hoon. We became the closest of friends, and before I returned to Nigeria, we made each other a promise. If either of us ever needed help, our children would become family. He has searched for us for many years, but I never wanted to burden him with my illness. Now I ask you to finish the promise I could not. Go to Seoul, find him, give him this necklace. Trust no one until you meet him personally." Amara slowly lowered the letter. Her entire life suddenly felt larger than she had ever imagined. There was another page. This one contained only one sentence. "Someone else is looking for the necklace. Never let it leave your hands. A cold breeze swept across the yard. Almost instinctively, Amara looked toward the road. A black SUV had stopped several houses away. Its dark windows hid everyone inside. One of the passengers appeared to be watching her. Seconds later, the vehicle quietly drove away. Amara's heartbeat quickened. Was it only coincidence? Or had someone already discovered her mother's secret? Thousands of kilometers away, in the heart of Seoul, Kang Min-jae finished another 16-hour workday. The handsome young heir adjusted his dark, tailored suit as he walked through the silent underground parking garage. His cold expression never changed. His bodyguards followed at a respectful distance. Suddenly, an elderly man rushed toward him. "Young master." Min-jae stopped. "What is it?" The old family butler struggled to catch his breath. "We've received new information." Min-jae's eyes narrowed. "About the Nigerian family." For the first time in years, the emotionless billionaire looked genuinely surprised. "Are you certain?" The butler nodded. "We believe the daughter may finally be coming to Seoul." Min-jae remained silent. Then he quietly asked, "After 26 years, has destiny finally remembered us?" Neither man noticed another figure hiding in the shadows. The stranger smiled before making a phone call. "The girl has opened the letter." "Good. Should we stop her before she reaches Korea?" A cold voice answered from the other end. "No, let her come. It will be much easier to take the necklace once she arrives." The call ended. The stranger disappeared into the darkness. Meanwhile, Amara stood alone under Nigerian sunset, completely unaware that the journey she had promised to make had already placed her at the center of a dangerous game stretching across 2 continents. Someone in Seoul is waiting to protect Amara. Someone else is waiting to destroy everything her mother kept hidden for 26 years. But neither of them knows. Amara has already decided to book the first flight to Seoul. The following morning, the first rays of sunlight spread across the quiet village as Amara stood outside her small family home. She wore a simple but elegant cream-colored blouse, dark blue jeans, and white sneakers. Around her neck hung the old silver necklace her mother had protected for more than 26 years. Hidden safely inside her handbag were the letter and the faded photograph. Everything she owned fit into a single suitcase. Her neighbors gathered to say goodbye. Some smiled proudly. Others looked worried. Amara, an elderly woman, called, embracing her tightly. "You've never traveled outside Nigeria before. Are you sure about this?" Amara smiled gently, though her eyes were filled with emotion. "I'm afraid, but I made my mother a promise. I have to keep it." The old woman kissed her forehead. "May God guide every step you take." Several hours later, the bustling airport was unlike anything Amara had ever seen. Travelers hurried in every direction. Announcements echoed through the terminal. Children laughed. Suitcases rolled across the polished floor. For a moment, Amara stood still, taking it all in. "This is really happening," she whispered. After checking in, she sat quietly near the departure gate, watching airplanes rise into the sky. Her heart was filled with excitement and fear. She wondered what Seoul looked like. She wondered if Kang Ji-hoon was still alive. Most of all, she wondered why someone wanted the necklace so badly. Just then, a well-dressed man wearing sunglasses sat a few seats away. Without looking directly at her, he spoke softly into his phone. "Target confirmed. She's at the airport. Should we approach?" A calm voice replied, "No, let her believe she's safe." The man ended the call without Amara noticing. Thousands of kilometers away, Seoul shimmered beneath a brilliant blue sky. On the top floor of the Kang Group headquarters, Kang Min-jae stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. His tailored charcoal suit fit him perfectly. Tall, confident, and strikingly handsome, he carried himself with quiet authority. His assistant entered cautiously. "Sir, the investigation team has confirmed it." Min-jae slowly turned. "What did they find?" "The young woman from Nigeria boarded a flight this morning." Silence filled the office. For several moments, Min-jae simply looked out over the city. Then he quietly said, "Prepare the guest residence." The assistant blinked in surprise. Sir, no outsider has ever been allowed to stay there. I know, but she is an outsider. Those words stunned everyone in the room. Back in the air, Amara gazed through the airplane window as clouds stretched endlessly beneath her. She gently opened her mother's letter once again. Between its folded pages, she discovered something she had somehow missed before, a tiny photograph. On the back, written in faded ink, were just 5 words. Trust only the man smiling. She turned the photograph over. It showed 2 young Korean men standing beside her mother. One was smiling warmly. The other stared directly into the camera, without the slightest hint of emotion. Amara frowned. Which one is Kang Ji-hoon? She had no way of knowing. The smiling young man in the photograph was Kang Ji-hoon. The cold young man standing beside him would one day become the father of Kang Min-jae. And the hidden rivalry between those 2 families had already begun long before Mara was born. As the aircraft flew toward Seoul, destiny quietly brought 2 lives closer together. Neither Amara nor Min-jae knew that within the next 24 hours, their first meeting would happen in the most unexpected way imaginable. As Amara's plane begins its descent into Seoul, another passenger quietly slips a note into her handbag. She doesn't notice. The note contains only one chilling sentence. If you value your life, do not leave Incheon Airport alive. The aircraft pierced through the thick white clouds as the captain's calm voice echoed through the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be landing shortly at Incheon International Airport. The local time in Seoul is 6:45 a.m. The weather is cool with light rain. Welcome to the Republic of Korea. Amara slowly opened her eyes. She had barely slept during the long journey. Looking out the window, she saw a breathtaking view of the Korean coastline, sparkling beneath the early morning light. Tall buildings stretched into the distance, while neat highways curved around the city like silver ribbons. Her heart raced. So this is Seoul. She gently touched the silver necklace beneath her blouse. Mama, I've made it. As passengers began leaving the aircraft, Amara followed the crowd, pulling her single suitcase behind her. Everything felt new. The signs written in Hangul, the polite airport staff bowing to travelers, the soft instrumental music playing through the terminal. Even the cool autumn air felt different from home. For a moment, she forgot all her fears. She smiled. Then, as she reached into her handbag to find her passport, her fingers touched a folded piece of paper. Confused, she unfolded it. Her smile disappeared. Written in neat black ink were the words, "Leave the necklace in Locker C, 17 before noon, or you will never leave Seoul alive." Her hands trembled. She quickly looked around. Thousands of travelers walked through the terminal. Businessmen, families, students, tourists. No one seemed to be watching her. Yet someone had slipped the note into her bag without her noticing. She took a deep breath. No. She folded the paper and placed it back inside. I didn't come all this way to run. At that very moment, a sleek black luxury sedan rolled toward the airport's VIP entrance. Inside sat Kang Min-jae, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit. He looked calm and unreadable. Beside him sat his loyal secretary, Mr. Han. "Sir," Mr. Han said quietly, "our security team has confirmed Miss Amara has landed safely." Min-jae nodded once. "Good. But..." Mr. Han hesitated. "Our surveillance team has also identified members of the CO organization inside the airport." Min-jae's expression hardened. "They're moving sooner than expected. They believe she already has a necklace." For several seconds, silence filled the car. Then Min-jae spoke. "No matter what happens today, she leaves this airport under my protection." Meanwhile, Amara exited the arrival hall, overwhelmed by the sea of faces waiting outside. People held signs with names written in different languages. Taxi drivers greeted visitors. Families embraced loved ones with joyful tears. She searched for the business card from her mother's letter. The address was only a short distance away. "I'll take a taxi," she whispered. Just as she stepped toward the taxi queue, a little girl, no older than 6, suddenly ran into the road after her red balloon. Everything happened in seconds. A speeding delivery van rushed toward the child. People screamed. Without thinking, Amara dropped her suitcase and sprinted forward. She grabbed the little girl and threw both of them onto the pavement. The balloon floated harmlessly into the sky. The van screeched to a stop just meters away. The airport entrance fell silent. The little girl's mother burst into tears, hugging her daughter tightly before turning to Amara. Thank you so much." Amara smiled softly. "She's safe. That's all that matters." A few meters away, standing beside his luxury sedan, Kang Min-jae had witnessed everything. He stared at the young Nigerian woman who had risked her own life to save a complete stranger. For the first time in many years, the cold Heir's expression changed. Not because she was beautiful, not because of the promise made decades ago, but because she had done something almost no one else would have done. She acted without expecting anything in return. As Amara bent down to pick up her fallen suitcase, she accidentally dropped the old silver necklace. It slid across the wet pavement. A man in a dark coat saw it. His eyes widened. "There it is." He quietly reached inside his jacket. Min-jae noticed the movement instantly. His instincts told him something was terribly wrong. Before anyone else could react, he took one decisive step forward. The mysterious man lunged toward the necklace. At the exact same moment, Kang Min-jae moved to intercept him. Amara looked up in confusion, unaware that she was about to meet the man who would change her destiny forever. The silver necklace spun across the rain-soaked pavement. For a split second, everything seemed to slow down. The man in the dark coat lunged toward it, his gloved fingers only inches away. But another hand reached it first. Kang Min-jae. His movements were swift, calm, and precise. He picked up the necklace before the stranger could touch it. The mysterious man froze. His eyes met Min-jae's. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. Then the stranger quietly stepped backward into the crowd. Within seconds, he disappeared among hundreds of travelers. Airport security rushed over. "Sir, are you all right?" Min-jae ignored the question. Instead, he lowered his gaze to the necklace resting in his palm. His breathing slowed. He had seen this necklace before. Years ago, as a child, his late grandfather had once held an old photograph of a smiling Nigerian woman wearing the exact same necklace. "So," he whispered to himself, "she really came." Amara hurried toward him. "Excuse me." Her voice was gentle but slightly nervous. I think that's mine." Min-jae slowly looked up. For the first time, their eyes met. Amara was surprised by how handsome he was. Tall, elegant, with sharp Korean features and calm, intelligent eyes. There was something distant about him, yet strangely comforting. Min-jae, meanwhile, studied the young woman standing before him. She was exactly as the old photograph had suggested. Beautiful, graceful. Her rich, dark complexion glowed beneath the soft airport lights, and despite the exhausting journey, kindness still shone through her warm brown eyes. He handed her the necklace. "You should keep this somewhere safer." Amara accepted it with both hands. "Thank you." She smiled politely. That smile lasted only a few seconds, yet for reasons Min-jae couldn't explain, he found it difficult to look away. His secretary, Mr. Han, quietly cleared his throat. "Sir." The moment was broken. Min-jae returned to his usual composed expression. He looked at Amara. "Are you Miss Amara Okoye?" Her eyes widened. "How do you know my name?" Instead of answering immediately, Min-jae reached into his jacket and removed a familiar photograph. It was identical to the one inside her mother's wooden box. Amara gasped. You know my mother?" "My grandfather did." He paused. "And so did my father." For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the airport faded into the background. It felt as though destiny itself had arranged a meeting. Mr. Han stepped forward politely. "Miss Okoye, my name is Han Sung-ho. We've been searching for you and your family for many years." Amara looked from Mr. Han to Min-jae. "I don't understand." "My mother only told me to find a man named Kang Ji-hoon." A shadow crossed Min-jae's face. "You were too late." Amara's heart sank. "What do you mean?" Min-jae lowered his eyes. "My grandfather passed away 2 years ago." The word struck her like thunder. She had traveled across continents to fulfill her mother's promise, and the man she was supposed to meet was gone. Tears filled her eyes. I failed. No, Min-jae replied quietly. You kept your promise. He looked at the necklace once more. My grandfather believed you would come. He instructed our family to welcome you as one of our own. Before Mara could respond, a loud explosion echoed from the far end of the airport parking area. People screamed. Smoke rose into the air. Security officers shouted instructions. Passengers ran in every direction. Mr. Han immediately stepped in front of Min-jae. Sir, it's a diversion, Min-jae said calmly. He looked toward Amara. They're here for you. Almost instantly, 3 men wearing black jackets emerged from a frightened crowd. Their eyes were fixed on Amara. One of them pointed directly at the silver necklace around her neck. There she is. Without hesitation, Min-jae stepped between Amara and the approaching men. His voice remained calm. Stay behind me. Amara stared at him in disbelief. She had known this man for less than 5 minutes, yet he was already risking his own safety to protect her. The leader of the group smiled coldly. Kong Min-jae, you've just declared war. Min-jae's expression never changed. No. He slowly adjusted the cuff of his suit. You declared it. The moment you came after someone under my protection. The 3 men began closing in. Airport security was too far away. Rain started falling again over the parking area. Amara's heartbeat pounded in her chest as Kong Min-jae took one step forward, ready to face the men who had been hunting her since she left Nigeria. The cold rain grew heavier, turning the airport pavement into a mirror of shimmering lights. Passengers rushed toward the terminal, desperate to escape the chaos. But Kong Min-jae didn't move. He stood firmly in front of Amara, his broad shoulders shielding her from the 3 men slowly approaching through the rain. His voice remained calm. Mr. Han. Yes, sir. Take Miss Okoye to the car. Mr. Han nodded immediately. This way, Miss Okoye. Amara hesitated. But what about him? Before anyone could answer, the leader of the 3 men laughed. So this is a famous Kong Min-jae, the man who believes money can solve everything. Min-jae's expression remained cold. You're mistaken. It's not money. It's loyalty. The man's smile disappeared. Hand over the girl. And the necklace. We'll leave peacefully. Min-jae slowly removed his expensive black suit jacket and handed it to Mr. Han. Even in a simple white dress shirt, he looked calm and powerful. I've never negotiated with cowards. The man's face darkened. Then don't blame us. Without warning, one of the attackers charged forward. Before Mara could even scream, Min-jae stepped aside with incredible speed. The attacker lost his balance. Min-jae grabbed his arm, twisted it with practiced precision, and sent him crashing harmlessly onto the wet pavement. Gasps filled the parking lot. Even the airport security officers stopped in surprise. The second attacker rushed in. Min-jae blocked the punch effortlessly before pushing him backward several steps. The 3rd man reached into his jacket. Mr. Han's eyes widened. Sir, he has a knife. Amara's heart nearly stopped. The attacker lunged toward Min-jae, but before the blade could reach him, several black SUVs screeched into the parking area. Their doors flew open. Nearly a dozen professionally dressed security officers rushed out. Within seconds, they surrounded the attackers. The leader realized they had lost. He looked directly at Amara. This isn't over. He pointed toward the necklace. That belongs to us. Then, using the confusion around them, the 3 men disappeared into the rain before police officers could catch them. Silence returned. The rain continued falling softly. Min-jae calmly picked up his suit jacket. It was as though nothing unusual had happened. Amara stared at him in disbelief. You could have been seriously hurt. He looked at her quietly. If I had stepped aside, you would have been. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then something unexpected happened. Amara noticed a small cut on Min-jae's hand. Blood slowly trickled down his fingers. You've been injured. It's nothing. No. She gently reached into her handbag and removed a small packet of antiseptic wipes and a bandage she always carried. My mother always said, even a small wound deserves kindness. Without waiting for permission, she carefully cleaned the cut on his hand. Min Jae stood perfectly still. No one, not even his closest employees, had ever treated him with such simple, genuine care. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't afraid of him. She was simply helping. When she finished, she smiled softly. There. Now it won't get infected. Min Jae looked at the small bandage on his hand. Something warm stirred inside him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Mr. Han quietly smiled to himself. He had served the Kong family for over 30 years. This was the first time he had seen the cold air allow someone to touch him so naturally. As they approached the waiting limousine, Amara looked around the enormous city. Towering skyscrapers glowed against the gray evening sky. Colorful neon signs reflected on the rain-soaked streets. Luxury cars moved silently through the city. Everything felt like another world. Min Jae opened the limousine door himself. Welcome to Seoul. Amara smiled. Thank you. As the limousine pulled away from the airport, neither of them noticed a black motorcycle following at a distance. The rider wore a dark helmet. Hidden inside the helmet was a small communication device. The rider spoke quietly. They've left the airport. A cold voice answered. Good. Don't attack. Just follow them. We need to know whether the girl has already discovered the real secret hidden inside the necklace. The call ended. The motorcycle continued following the limousine through the glowing streets of Seoul. Inside the limousine, Amara looked out the window in amazement. She had no idea that her new life had already begun. As the limousine entered the gates of the magnificent Kong family estate, the silver necklace around Amara's neck suddenly began to glow faintly under the passing lights. Min Jae noticed it. His eyes widened. It can't be. For the first time in years, the unshakable Heir looked genuinely shocked. What was hidden inside the necklace that even he had never known? The black limousine rolled slowly through the towering iron gates of the Kong family estate. Amara looked out of the window in amazement. The estate was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Beautiful gardens stretched across the property, illuminated by elegant stone lanterns. A sparkling fountain stood proudly in the center, while the magnificent mansion rose behind it like a royal palace, blending traditional Korean architecture with modern luxury. Her eyes widened. This is your home? Kong Min Jae nodded quietly. Yes. Amara smiled nervously. I've never seen anything this beautiful. Min Jae glanced at her. Instead of being impressed by the wealth, she seemed genuinely fascinated by the beauty of the place. That alone made her different from almost everyone he had ever met. As the limousine came to a stop, dozens of house staff lined both sides of the grand entrance. They bowed respectfully. Welcome home, young master. Min Jae stepped out first before opening the door for Amara. She hesitated. You don't have to. It's all right, he replied calmly. She accepted his hand. For just a brief second, their hands touched. Neither of them spoke. Yet, both of them felt something they couldn't explain. Inside the mansion, Amara admired the polished wooden floors, elegant paintings, and soft golden lights. Everything reflected warmth and history. An elderly woman wearing a graceful traditional hanbok approached with gentle smile. Young master. She then looked warmly at Amara. So, you are finally here. Amara blinked in surprise. You were expecting me? The elderly housekeeper nodded. For many years. My name is Mrs. Choi. I worked for Chairman Kong Ji-hoon until his final day. At the mention of his name, Amara lowered her head respectfully. I'm sorry I came too late. Mrs. Choi gently held her hands. No, you came exactly when destiny intended. Those words filled Amara's eyes with tears. Mrs. Choi noticed the silver necklace resting around her neck. Her smile suddenly faded. Young master, you saw it too? Min Jae nodded. When the limousine entered the gate, the necklace reflected a strange light. Mrs. Choi looked around carefully before lowering her voice. Come with me. She led them through a quiet corridor into an old library that had remained untouched for years. Books filled every wall. Ancient paintings decorated the room. In the center stood a beautifully carved wooden desk. Mrs. Choi reached beneath the desk and pulled out a small velvet-covered box. Inside was an old diary. This belonged to Chairman Kang Ji-hoon. She carefully opened the final pages. There was a hand-drawn sketch. It was Amara's necklace. Her heartbeat quickened. My mother never told me this. Mrs. Choi pointed to a paragraph written beneath the drawing. The necklace is only the key. The real promise remains hidden. Amara looked confused. What does that mean? Before anyone could answer, Min-jae gently examined the necklace. His fingers carefully traced its delicate silver pattern. Then he noticed something unusual. There, a tiny symbol had been carved into the back. It was almost invisible. He pressed it gently. Click. The necklace quietly opened. Amara gasped. Hidden inside was something no larger than a fingernail. A tiny golden key. Everyone in the room froze. Mrs. Choi covered her mouth. It really exists. Tears filled her eyes. For 26 years. We thought it had been lost forever. Amara stared at the tiny key resting in her palm. What does it open? Before anyone could answer, every light inside the mansion suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the room. The emergency alarm began echoing throughout the estate. Security guards shouted outside. Mr. Han burst into the library. Young master, the power was an accident. Our security cameras have gone offline. Min-jae immediately stood. How many intruders? Mr. Han's face turned pale. We don't know. But someone has entered this estate, and they're heading straight for this library. The room fell silent. Whoever the intruders were, they hadn't come for money. They hadn't come for revenge. They had come for the tiny golden key hidden inside Amara's necklace. Heavy footsteps echoed through the dark hallway outside the library. Then, 3 slow knocks sounded on the ancient wooden door. Knock, knock, knock. A deep voice called from the other side. Open the door. We know the key is inside. Amara instinctively stepped closer to Kang Min-jae. Without saying a word, he moved in front of her once again. The library fell into complete silence. Only the sound of the heavy rain outside and the distant emergency alarm echoed through the mansion. Everyone stared at the ancient wooden door. Then, knock, knock, knock. The deep voice came again. Young Master Kang. We're coming in. Mrs. Choi's face turned pale. They found us. Mr. Han quietly drew a small flashlight from his pocket and handed it to Min-jae. Our security team is fighting them downstairs, but they won't hold them for long. Min-jae remained calm. He switched on the flashlight. The narrow beam illuminated the old bookshelves and the frightened faces around him. Then he looked at the tiny golden key resting in Amara's hand. His grandfather's final words suddenly echoed in his mind. If the girl ever comes, never let anyone else touch the key. He turned toward Amara. Do you trust me? She looked into his eyes. Only a few hours earlier, they had been strangers. Yet this man had protected her at the airport, risked his life for her, and welcomed her into his home without asking for anything in return. She nodded. Yes, I trust you. For the first time, the corner of Min-jae's lips lifted into the faintest smile. It was almost impossible to notice, but Mrs. Choi saw it. So did Mr. Han. Neither of them had seen the cold air smile in years. Suddenly, bang! The library door shook violently, which splintered near the lock. They're breaking in, Mr. Han whispered. Min-jae quickly scanned the room. His eyes stopped on the old painting hanging above the fireplace. It showed a peaceful mountain village beneath cherry blossoms. Something about it seemed familiar. He remembered another page from his grandfather's diary. When darkness comes, the mountain will reveal the path. Without hesitation, he walked the painting. He gently lifted it. Behind it was a small keyhole, exactly the same shape as the tiny golden key. Everyone held their breath. Amara stepped forward. Her hands trembled as she carefully inserted the golden key. It fit perfectly. She turned it. Click. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire bookshelf beside the fireplace slowly began to move. A cold gust of air escaped from the darkness behind it. Mrs. Choi gasped. The hidden passage. I thought it was only a legend. Behind the bookshelf stretched a narrow stone tunnel illuminated by old lanterns that flickered to life automatically. It looked untouched for decades. Min Jae looked at Amara. We're leaving. But what about the others? She asked. My security team knows their duty. They'll buy us enough time. Another loud crash echoed behind them. The library door was beginning to crack. The attackers were almost inside. Min Jae gently took Amara's hand. Stay close to me. She didn't hesitate. She tightened her grip around his hand. Together, they stepped into the hidden passage. As soon as everyone entered, the bookshelf silently slid back into place. Seconds later, the library door burst open. More than a dozen masked men stormed inside. Their leader scanned the room with furious eyes. They're gone. One of the men pointed toward the open diary on the desk. Boss! The key. It's missing. The leader slammed his fist onto the desk. Search every inch of this estate. They cannot leave alive. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Kong mansion, Amara and Min Jae walked through the ancient tunnel. The air was cool. Water dripped slowly from the stone ceiling. The narrow passage twisted beneath the estate like a forgotten maze. Amara looked around nervously. Who built this place? My great-grandfather. He lived during a difficult time in Korea. He believed every family should have a way to protect those they loved. His words lingered in Amara's mind. Protect those they loved. Without realizing it, she smiled. Min Jae noticed. What? She shook her head. Nothing. I was just thinking. My mother would have liked your grandfather. Min Jae looked ahead. I think they would have become family exactly as they planned. A comfortable silence followed. Neither of them realized that. With every step through the hidden passage, the distance between their hearts was quietly growing smaller. At the far end of the tunnel, an old wooden door waited. Above it was a carved inscription in Korean. Min Jae brushed away the dust and translated it aloud. Only those who keep their promises may enter. He reached for the handle. Before he could turn it, a soft voice echoed from the darkness beyond the door. I've been waiting for you. Amara froze. She looked at Min Jae. Did you hear that? He nodded slowly. Yes, but that's impossible. No one has entered this place for over 20 years. Min Jae slowly pushed open the ancient wooden door. As light spilled into the hidden chamber, both he and Amara stood frozen. Someone was already inside. An elderly man quietly rose from his chair, as though he had been expecting them all along. The ancient wooden door creaked open. Warm golden light spilled into the tunnel. Amara blinked in surprise. The chamber before them looked nothing like a hidden bunker. It resembled a peaceful study. Ancient Korean calligraphy decorated the walls. Shelves filled with old journals and carefully preserved family records stretched from floor to ceiling. In one corner, a kettle rested over a small charcoal stove, gently releasing fragrant steam. Standing beside it was an elderly man dressed in a simple gray hanbok. His silver hair was neatly combed. His posture was straight, despite his age. Most striking of all, his eyes were calm, wise, and welcoming. He smiled gently. You finally arrived. Min Jae instinctively stepped in front of Amara. Who are you? The old man chuckled softly. You become just like your grandfather, always protecting others before asking questions. Amara looked at the stranger with confusion. Do you know us? The elderly man slowly bowed. My name is Professor Lee Sung-ho. For over 26 years, I have been the guardian of this room. Min Jae's eyes widened. Professor Lee? My grandfather mentioned you in his journals. The old man nodded. We made each other promise. If the day ever came when a young Nigerian woman carrying a silver necklace appeared, I was to tell her the truth. Amara's heart began to race. The truth? Professor Lee gestured toward two chairs. Please, you've traveled a long way. You deserve to know why your mother was never forgotten. As they sat, the professor carefully removed an old leather photo album from a wooden cabinet. He placed it on the table. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the first page. Amara's eyes immediately filled with tears. There was her mother, young, smiling brightly, standing beside Chairman Kong, Ji-hoon, beneath blooming cherry blossoms. Another photograph showed them volunteering together at a community center. Another captured them sharing a meal with university friends. "They look so happy," Amara whispered. "They were," Professor Lee replied. "They believed friendship could unite people from different nations. They dreamed of creating scholarships that would allow African and Korean students to study together." Min Jae looked surprised. "My grandfather never told me that. He rarely spoke about dreams he couldn't finish." Professor Lee sighed. "Life changed. Business responsibilities grew. Your mother returned to Nigeria. But neither of them forgot the promise they made." He turned another page. Inside was a carefully folded letter. "This is the final letter your mother sent to Chairman Kong." Amara stared in disbelief. "My mother wrote to him?" "Yes, but it arrived after he had already fallen seriously ill." Professor Lee handed the letter to Amara. With trembling fingers, she unfolded it. "Dear Ji-hoon, thank you for giving me a family when I was alone in a foreign country. One day, if God allows, my daughter will visit Korea. Please welcome her with the same kindness you showed me. If our children become friends, I will know that distance never defeated love or friendship." Tears rolled down Amara's cheeks. Min Jae quietly looked away, giving her the privacy to grieve. After several moments, Professor Lee spoke again. "There is something else." He walked toward an old wooden chest resting beneath the window. Using another key hidden beneath his sleeve, he unlocked it. Inside lay dozens of neatly organized documents. At the center rested a beautifully carved wooden box. He placed it gently before Amara. "This box belongs to you." She looked confused. "To me?" Professor Lee nodded. "Your mother left it here 26 years ago. I promised not to open it. I promised to give it only to her daughter." Amara slowly lifted the lid. Inside rested a delicate bracelet made of silver and jade. Beneath it, a sealed envelope and one small velvet pouch. She opened the pouch first. A ring slipped gently into her hand. It wasn't extravagant. It wasn't decorated with diamonds. Instead, its inner surface carried two names engraved side by side. Grace Okoye, Kong Ji-hoon. Amara's breath caught. "What is this?" Professor Lee smiled kindly. It was never an engagement ring. It was a friendship ring. They had matching rings made before your mother returned to Nigeria. They promised that no matter how many years pass, their families would always have a place in each other's hearts. Min Jae lowered his head respectfully. "My grandfather kept his ring until the day he died." Before anyone could say another word, a loud vibration echoed through the chamber. Mr. Han's emergency communicator crackled. "Young master, we secured the mansion, but we've discovered something alarming." Min Jae answered immediately. "What is it?" The attack on the estate was only a distraction. They had broken into Chairman Kong, Ji-hoon's private office. Professor Lee's gentle smile disappeared. His face became unusually serious. "If they've entered Ji-hoon's office, then they're no longer searching for the necklace." Amara frowned. "Then what are they looking for?" The old professor slowly looked toward the sealed envelope, still lying inside the wooden box. His voice became almost a whisper. "They're looking for the document your mother never wanted anyone else to find." The room fell silent. Amara stared at the untouched envelope. Whatever was inside had been protected for more than 26 years. As Amara reached for the sealed envelope, the wax seal suddenly caught her attention. Pressed into the red wax was a symbol she had seen before. The exact same symbol, tattooed on the wrist of one of the men who attacked her at Incheon Airport. Who were they? And why had they been searching for her mother's secret for over 2 decades? For several long seconds, no one spoke. The hidden chamber felt strangely still, as though even time itself had paused. Amara gently picked up the sealed envelope. The cream-colored paper had aged with time, yet the red wax seal remained perfectly intact. Her fingertips trembled. "This My mother prepared this 26 years ago. Professor Lee nodded. She wrote it on the evening before she returned to Nigeria. Chairman Kong promised never to open it. He believed that promise belonged only to you. Amara closed her eyes. She could almost hear her mother's gentle voice. Be brave, my daughter. Slowly, she broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter, and a small brass key attached to a blue ribbon. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was her mother's. My dearest Amara, if you are reading this, then you have already met the family I once trusted with my life. Never judge people by their wealth or by the stories others tell about them. Judge them by how they treat those who can offer them nothing in return. Amara glanced at Min-jae. She remembered how he had stood between her and danger without asking for anything. Her eyes softened. She continued reading. There will come a time when you will have to choose between fear and love. Choose love, but never choose foolishness. Kindness is strength when it walks beside wisdom. A tear rolled down her cheek. Professor Lee quietly turned away, giving her privacy. Min-jae remained silent. He didn't interrupt. He simply waited. Amara unfolded the final page. Her breathing stopped. There is one more truth I never had the courage to tell you. The promise between our families was never about money or inheritance. It was about protecting hope. Inside Chairman Kang's private office is a lock cabinet. The brass key enclosed with this letter opens it. What is hidden there belongs to both families, not because it is valuable, but because it carries a dream that should never die. Professor Lee smiled sadly. Grace never cared about riches. No, Min-jae said quietly. She cared about people. Professor Lee nodded. Exactly. He walked toward the window. When your mother studied in Seoul, she saw talented African students struggling to continue their education. And Chairman Kong saw brilliant Korean students facing the same hardships. So they created a dream. Amara looked up. What dream? A foundation. A scholarship that would bring young Africans to Korea and young Koreans to Africa. They wanted students from both countries to learn from one another. But before they could establish it, life separated them. Silence filled the room. Amara held the letter close to her heart. So my mother's greatest wish was to finish what they started. Professor Lee smiled. Yes. And now, that responsibility belongs to you. Min-jae looked directly at Amara. If that was my grandfather's dream, then I intend to honor it. She looked into his eyes. For the first time since arriving in Seoul, she smiled without fear. Then we'll honor it together. Their eyes met. Neither of them realized it, but something had quietly changed between them. Not romance. Not yet. Something deeper. Trust. Just then, Mr. Han's phone rang again. His face became serious. Young master, our investigation team has identified the men who attacked the airport and the estate. Min-jae's expression hardened. Who are they? They're not ordinary criminals. They work for the CO Consortium. Professor Lee slowly closed his eyes. I was afraid of this. Amara frowned. Who are they? Professor Lee turned toward her. 26 years ago, they tried to buy the land where your mother and Chairman Kong planned to build the first international education center. They failed, and they never forgave either of them. Min-jae's jaw tightened. So this has been about revenge all along. Professor Lee shook his head. No, revenge was only the beginning. He looked toward the brass key in Amara's hand. They believe the cabinet contains documents that could expose something powerful enough to destroy their influence. Before anyone could ask another question, every phone in the room vibrated at exactly the same moment. Mr. Han looked at his screen. His face turned pale. Young master, it's from the mansion. What happened? Mr. Han swallowed hard. The cabinet in Chairman Kang's office is already open. The room froze. Professor Lee whispered only 3 words. We're too late. Security cameras captured a single masked figure leaving the office with a thin black folder. As the person removed their mask inside a waiting car, Min-jae stared at the live image. His voice was filled with disbelief. It can't be. because the person who had stolen the folder was someone his family had trusted for years. A heavy silence settled over the hidden chamber. No one moved. No one even seemed to breathe. The image on Mr. Han's phone remained frozen. A middle-aged man stepped into a black sedan, carrying the thin black folder. His face was now clearly visible. Professor Lee slowly lowered himself into a chair. No, it can't be. Amara looked from one face to another. Who is he? Min Jae's expression became colder than ever. Director Park, the chairman's personal legal advisor. Amara frowned. The legal advisor? He worked with your grandfather? For almost 30 years, Min Jae replied quietly. My grandfather trusted him with confidential documents, family records, everything. Mr. Han clenched his fists. He attended the chairman's funeral. He cried with us. And all this time, he was betraying the family. Professor Lee sighed deeply. Sometimes the deepest wounds are caused by the people standing closest to us. Rain continued to fall outside as thunder rolled across the Seoul sky. Amara looked at the photograph on the phone once more. He doesn't look frightened. No, Min Jae answered. He looks confident. Which means he believes someone powerful is protecting him. Mr. Han's phone rang again. It was the head of the Kong Family Security Division. Young Master, report. We recovered fingerprints from the office, and they belonged to Director Park. But there was another unidentified person with him. Min Jae narrowed his eyes. Who? We don't know. But security cameras captured only one detail. They were wearing a silver ring engraved with the symbol of the CO Consortium. Professor Lee slowly stood. The old war has begun again. 1 hour later, the hidden group returned to the main mansion. Although security officers guarded every entrance, the atmosphere felt tense. The usually peaceful estate now looked like a fortress. Amara walked quietly beside Min Jae. She noticed how every employee bowed respectfully as he passed. Yet despite his authority, he carried an unmistakable loneliness. As they entered the grand entrance hall, Mrs. Choi hurried toward them. You must both be exhausted. I prepared dinner. Amara smiled warmly. Thank you. Mrs. Choi's eyes sparkled. It has been many years since this dining room felt alive. The dining room was elegant yet welcoming. Traditional Korean dishes filled the long wooden table. Fresh grilled fish, steaming bowls of rice, vegetable side dishes, soup, kimchi, and, to Amara's surprise, a plate of perfectly seasoned jollof rice. She stopped walking. Her eyes widened. Jollof rice. Mrs. Choi laughed softly. When Chairman Kong learned that your mother missed Nigerian food, he asked one of Seoul's best African chefs to teach our kitchen staff. He hoped she would visit again one day. Tears immediately filled Amara's eyes. So, they never forgot her. Mrs. Choi gently shook her head. Never. Min Jae quietly pulled out a chair for Amara. She smiled. Thank you. It's nothing. But to everyone else in the room, it was far from nothing. Mr. Han nearly dropped the teapot. Mrs. Choi discreetly covered her smile. The cold air of the Kong family had never pulled out a chair for anyone. Not once. As dinner began, Amara tasted the jollof rice. She laughed softly. It isn't exactly like home. Everyone looked at her, but it's made with love. The entire room relaxed. Even Min Jae allowed the smallest smile to appear. You can help our chef improve a recipe. She looked at him with playful surprise. So, you're admitting it needs improvement? For a second, Min Jae looked almost embarrassed. I suppose I am. Mr. Han looked at Mrs. Choi. Neither of them had ever seen their young master tease without becoming irritated. Yet tonight, he simply accepted it. For the first time in years, the mansion echoed with genuine laughter. Elsewhere, inside an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Seoul, Director Park placed a stolen black folder onto a steel table. Several powerful figures sat in the shadows. One of them slowly opened the folder. His smile disappeared. This is impossible. Director Park looked confused. What? The man threw the folder back onto the table. It's empty. Director Park's face turned pale. No. I watched him lock the cabinet myself. The mysterious leader leaned forward. If the documents aren't here, then Kong Jun deceived all of us. He slowly smiled. Which means the girl is carrying the real secret. The room fell silent. Then the leader gave a chilling order. Bring me Amara Okoye. I don't care how. But this time, do not fail. Late that night, unable to sleep, Amara stepped onto the mansion's moonlit garden balcony. As she admired the quiet beauty of Seoul, she noticed someone standing beneath the old cherry blossom tree. It was Kong Min-jae. He wasn't looking at the flowers. He was quietly holding an old photograph of her mother. Then, for the first time, Amara saw tears in the eyes of the man everyone believed had no heart. The moon hung peacefully above the Kong estate. A cool breeze carried the sweet fragrance of the cherry blossom trees across the quiet garden. Unable to sleep, Amara wrapped a light cream-colored cardigan over her shoulders and stepped onto the stone pathway. The events of the day replayed endlessly in her mind. The airport attack, the hidden passage, the tiny golden key, the mysterious documents. It all felt like a dream. As she walked deeper into the garden, she noticed a familiar figure standing beneath the oldest cherry blossom tree. Kong Min-jae. His hands rested quietly in his pockets as he gazed toward the night sky. The usual cold expression on his face had disappeared. Instead, there was sadness. Real sadness. Amara hesitated. She wondered if she should leave him alone. Just as she turned to go, Min-jae spoke without looking back. You can't sleep either? She smiled softly. No, I suppose today has been unforgettable. A faint smile crossed his face. That's one way to describe it. She slowly walked closer. The cherry blossoms drifted gently through the air, falling around them like soft pink snow. For several moments, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. Finally, Amara looked toward him. May I ask you something? You may. Earlier, I saw tears in her eyes. Min-jae lowered his gaze. I wasn't crying. She laughed gently. You Koreans are very determined not to admit things. He looked at her, and Nigerians aren't. She laughed again. We're not much better. For the first time, a genuine smile appeared on Min-jae's face. It wasn't forced. It wasn't polite. It was real. Amara noticed how different he looked when he smiled. The coldness disappeared. He suddenly seemed younger, kinder, more human. You should smile more often, she said quietly. It suits you. The compliment caught him completely off guard. No one had ever said those words to him. Not in years. He looked away, almost embarrassed. I've forgotten how. Amara's heart tightened. What happened? Min-jae looked toward the mansion. My parents died when I was very young. My grandfather raised me. He taught me that emotions could become weaknesses if the wrong people saw them. So I buried them. And eventually, I forgot how to express them. Amara listened without interrupting. Then she said something that surprised him. My mother used to tell me something. What? A heart doesn't become stronger by hiding. It becomes stronger by healing. Min-jae remained silent. Her words reached a place inside him that no business success ever had. Just then, a soft growl interrupted the moment. Amara quickly looked down. A tiny cream-colored puppy was standing near the cherry tree, his fur soaked from the rain. It shivered violently. Oh, you poor little thing. Without hesitation, Amara knelt down and gently picked it up. The puppy immediately licked her hand. She smiled brightly. Hello there. You must be hungry. Min-jae watched quietly. Even after everything she had endured, she still noticed the suffering of a small animal. He couldn't help smiling again. I've seen him before, he said. He wanders near the estate every few days. And no one helped him? They tried. He always ran away. The puppy curled comfortably against Amara's chest. She laughed. I think he just chose the right person. Min-jae looked at the tiny dog, then at Amara. I think you're right. Suddenly, the peaceful moment was interrupted. Mr. Han came running across the garden. His usually calm face showed urgency. Young master, Min Jae immediately became serious. What happened? Our cybersecurity team has recovered part of the deleted files from Chairman Kang's computer. And Mr. Han took a deep breath. We've discovered why the CO consortium wants the documents. Professor Lee, who had followed behind him, spoke quietly. It isn't just about the Scholarship Foundation. Amara frowned. Then what is it? Professor Lee looked directly at her. 26 years ago, your mother and Chairman Kong witnessed something they were never supposed to see. The night became eerily quiet. What did they see? Amara whispered. Professor Lee hesitated. Then he answered, a crime. A crime committed by some of the most powerful people in Korea. Min Jae's eyes widened. My grandfather never told me that. He couldn't, Professor Lee replied, because exposing the truth would have placed everyone he loved in danger. A cold wind swept through the garden. The tiny puppy whimpered softly in Amara's arms. Somewhere beyond the estate walls, a pair of binoculars reflected the moonlight. Someone was watching them. The observer lowered the binoculars and made a phone call. They're closer to the truth than we expected. The reply came instantly. Then don't wait. Tomorrow, we end this. As everyone hurried back toward the mansion, Amara looked down at the frightened puppy in her arms. Tucked beneath its small collar, she noticed a tiny folded piece of paper. It hadn't been there a few moments earlier. With trembling fingers, she unfolded it. There were only 6 handwritten words. Don't trust the man you love. Amara froze. But who was the warning about? Kang Min Jae, or someone else? Amara stared at the tiny piece of paper. The words seemed to grow heavier with every heartbeat. Don't trust the man you love. Her fingers tightened around the note. The puppy looked up at her with innocent eyes, wagging its tiny tail as if nothing had happened. Amara? Min Jae's calm voice brought her back to reality. She quickly folded the note and slipped it into the pocket of her cardigan. It's nothing. For the first time since they had met, she wasn't completely honest with him. Not because she wanted to deceive him, but because she didn't yet know who the message was talking about. Could it really mean Min Jae? Or was someone trying to make her doubt the only person who protected her since arriving in Seoul? Professor Lee gently took the puppy into his arms. It must belong to someone. He carefully examined the little animal. Then his eyes narrowed. There are fresh mud stains on its paws. Mr. Han looked confused. What does that mean? Professor Lee replied. It came from outside the estate. Someone deliberately sent it here. Min Jae immediately turned to his security team. Review every camera. I want to know exactly how this puppy entered the property. Yes, young master. The following morning, golden sunlight poured through the large windows of the Kong mansion. For the first time in days, the atmosphere felt peaceful. Mrs. Choi welcomed Amara into the kitchen. You woke early. Amara smiled. My mother always said mornings are a gift. Mrs. Choi laughed softly. Then perhaps you'd like to help me prepare breakfast. I'd love to. Soon, the elegant kitchen was filled with warmth. Amara chopped vegetables while Mrs. Choi prepared traditional Korean side dishes. They talked about family, childhood memories, and the small differences between Nigerian and Korean cooking. Mrs. Choi smiled. You know, the mansion has felt empty for many years. Amara looked around. It doesn't feel empty now. No, Mrs. Choi's eyes sparkled, because laughter has returned. Upstairs, Min Jae sat in his office, studying the recovered computer files. Several documents were badly damaged, but one digital photograph had survived. He enlarged it. His breathing slowed. The image showed Chairman Kong Ji-hoon and Grace Okoye standing beside an unfinished building. Behind them was a sign written in both Korean and English, the Horizon Foundation. His grandfather had almost achieved his dream. Mr. Han entered quietly. Young master, we've completed our investigation, and the puppy doesn't belong to anyone nearby. It was released outside the eastern wall just before midnight, so the note was intentional. Mr. Han nodded. There is something else. The handwriting doesn't match any known member of the CO consortium. Min Jae leaned back in his chair. So, we may have another player. Someone else had entered the game. Someone who knew the truth, but whose side were they on? Later that afternoon, Amara decided to explore a small section of the estate gardens. She carried a basket of flowers Mrs. Choi wanted placed near the family memorial. The peaceful surroundings reminded her of home. Birds sang softly. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves. She stopped before two stone memorial tablets. One belonged to Min Jae's parents, the other to Chairman Kang Ji-hoon. She placed the flowers gently before the memorial. Thank you for keeping your promise to my mother. A tear slipped down her cheek. I'll do my best to finish what you both started. As she stood to leave, she noticed fresh flowers already resting beside the memorial. Someone else had visited that morning. Attached to the bouquet was a small handwritten card. It read, "Forgive me, I failed to protect our dream." There was no signature, only a single symbol. The same symbol engraved on the friendship ring. Amara carefully picked up the card. Who left this? A familiar voice answered from behind. I did. She turned quickly. Standing only a few steps away was Director Park, the man accused of betraying the Kong family. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. Instead, he looked exhausted. His eyes were filled with regret. Amara instinctively stepped back. What are you doing here? Director Park slowly raised both hands. I'm not your enemy. Before Amara could respond, several security officers rushed into the garden, surrounding Director Park with their weapons drawn. Moments later, Min Jae arrived. The instant he saw Director Park, his face turned cold. You have a lot of courage coming here. Director Park looked directly into Min Jae's eyes. I didn't come to fight. I came because there's something you both need to hear. Min Jae's voice was firm. You stole my grandfather's files. No. Director Park answered quietly. I stole an empty folder. Because someone else had already taken the real documents. The garden fell silent. Amara looked from one man to the other. If Director Park wasn't the mastermind, then who had been manipulating everyone from the beginning? Director Park slowly reached into his coat. The security guards raised their weapons. Don't move. Ignoring them, he carefully removed an old photograph. The picture showed Grace Okoye, Chairman Kang Ji-hoon, Professor Lee, and a fourth person, a young woman smiling brightly. Amara stared at the face in disbelief. She looked almost exactly like Amara herself. The garden became eerily quiet. Even the wind seemed to stop. Amara stared at the old photograph in Director Park's trembling hand. Her heart pounded. The young woman standing beside Grace Okoye looked astonishingly familiar. She had the same deep ebony complexion, the same expressive brown eyes, the same graceful smile. For a moment, it felt as though Amara were looking into a mirror from another generation. Who is she? Amara whispered. Director Park carefully stepped forward. I've carried this photograph for more than 25 years. Min Jae's security guards immediately blocked his path. Stay where you are. Director Park stopped without resistance. I didn't come here to run. I came because too many lives have already stolen too many years. Min Jae's cold voice cut through the silence. Then start telling the truth. Director Park nodded. The woman in the photograph is not your sister. Amara's breathing became shallow. She is your aunt. My aunt? Yes. Her name was Hope Okoye. Amara searched her memory. She had never heard that name before. My mother never mentioned a sister. Professor Lee slowly closed his eyes. I was afraid this day would come. Everyone turned toward him. You knew? Min Jae asked. Professor Lee sighed deeply. Grace rarely spoke about hope after the tragedy. Amara looked confused. What tragedy? Director Park answered softly. Hope disappeared. The word struck Amara like thunder. Disappeared? 25 years ago. No body was ever found. Amara shook her head. No. My mother would have told me. Professor Lee's voice was filled with sadness. Grace believed keeping the truth from you was the only way to protect you. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. So my whole life, I've had an aunt I never knew existed. Director Park slowly handed the photograph to Min Jae. On the back was a handwritten message. No matter what happens, protect the children. Grace. Min Jae read the words twice. Then he looked at Director Park. What aren't you telling us? Director Park hesitated. Finally, he spoke. The Horizon Foundation wasn't destroyed because of money. It was destroyed because Hope witnessed a secret meeting. A meeting involving powerful businessmen and corrupt officials. They feared to expose them. Amara's hands trembled. So, they made her disappear? Director Park lowered his head. We never found proof, but we all feared the same thing. Silence filled the memorial garden. Just then, a black SUV stopped outside the estate gates. Mr. Han answered call from security. His face brightened for the first time that day. Young master, we've received unexpected visitors. Who? The Nigerian ambassador and a representative from the Korean Ministry of Education. Professor Lee smiled gently. It seems your mother's dream has begun to awaken. Amara looked toward the entrance of the estate. She had come to Seoul believing she was fulfilling one final promise. Now, that promise was becoming something much greater. Something that could change thousands of lives. As everyone began walking toward the mansion, Min Jae slowed his pace until he was beside Amara. Neither of them spoke for several moments. Finally, he said quietly, "You're carrying a very heavy burden." Amara smiled sadly. "I don't have to carry it alone anymore." Min Jae looked at her. For the first time in years, his heart felt lighter. Without thinking, he gently held out his hand. After a brief hesitation, Amara placed her hand in his. Neither noticed Mrs. Choi watching from the veranda. The elderly housekeeper smiled warmly. Then she whispered to herself, "Chairman, I think your wish is finally coming true." But far beyond the peaceful gardens of the Khan estate, inside a luxurious penthouse overlooking Seoul, a silver-haired man watched the estate through a live drone feed. He slowly switched off the monitor. "So, Grace's daughter has arrived." He stood and walked toward a wall covered with photographs. Among them was a picture of Hope Okoye. Unlike everyone else, he knew exactly what had happened to her. He smiled coldly. They're searching for the past. They should be afraid of the future. He picked up his phone. Prepare the car. It's time I meet Amara Okoye. As a mysterious man left the penthouse, he slipped an old gold locket into his pocket. Inside the locket was a faded photograph. One side showed Grace Okoye. The other showed Hope Okoye. And standing between the two sisters was the silver-haired man himself. The grand doors of the Khan mansion opened slowly. Outside, two official vehicles came to a gentle stop. One carried the flag of Nigeria. The other displayed the emblem of the Republic of Korea. Amara took a deep breath. For the first time since arriving in Seoul, she heard a familiar Nigerian accent. "Miss Amara Okoye?" She turned. A dignified middle-aged Nigerian man stepped forward with a warm smile. "I'm Ambassador Adewale Bello." He bowed respectfully toward the Kong family before extending his hand. "It's an honor to finally meet you." Amara smiled with relief. "It's an honor to meet you too, sir." For a brief moment, the homesickness she had tried so hard to hide softened. Hearing her own accent reminded her that no matter how far she had traveled, a part of Nigeria had arrived with her. Standing beside the ambassador was a graceful Korean woman in her early 40s. She introduced herself with a gentle bow. "My name is Kim Unesio. I represent the Ministry of Education." She looked warmly at Amara. "Your mother's dream has reached farther than you can imagine." A short while later, everyone gathered in the mansion's conference room. Professor Lee carefully placed the recovered Horizon Foundation documents on the table. Ambassador Bello examined them with great interest. "I remember hearing your mother's name years ago." Amara looked surprised. "You knew about her?" "Only through old educational records." Grace Okoye was highly respected. She believed education could build bridges where politics sometimes failed. Professor Lee smiled proudly. That was exactly who she was. Ms. Kim opened a leather folder. Over the last few years, the Korean government has expanded several international education programs. She looked directly at Amara. If the Horizon Foundation can legally be restored, our ministry is willing to discuss supporting it. The room fell silent. Amara could hardly believe what she was hearing. A dream that had been hidden for more than 2 decades was beginning to breathe again. Min Jae looked at her. You see, your mother never stopped changing lives. Amara lowered her eyes, overwhelmed. I only wish you were here to see this. Mrs. Choi gently squeezed her shoulder. I believe she already does. Meanwhile, across the city, the silver-haired man entered a luxurious private office. Director Park stood waiting. Unlike before, he looked tense. You asked to see me. The silver-haired man slowly walked toward the window. You've disappointed me. Director Park lowered his head. I couldn't bring the girl. No, you couldn't deceive Kong Min Jae any longer. Director Park remained silent. The older man turned. His face was calm. Too calm. You've grown sentimental. I simply refuse to betray innocent people again. The silver-haired man's smile disappeared. Innocent. He walked closer. Do you know what happens to people who choose conscience over loyalty? Director Park answered without fear. I've already spent 26 years regretting my silence. I'm not making the same mistake twice. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Finally, the silver-haired man nodded. I expected that answer. He pressed a button beneath his desk. 2 security guards entered immediately. Take him. Director Park didn't resist. As the guards escorted him away, he looked back one last time. You can imprison me, but the truth will still find them. The office door slammed shut. The silver-haired man looked at an old map pinned to the wall. At its center was a red circle around an abandoned school on the outskirts of Seoul. He whispered, It's almost time. Back at the Kong estate, dinner had ended. The guests had retired for the evening. Amara walked onto the veranda, carrying 2 cups of hot tea. Min Jae was already there, quietly watching the stars. I thought you might like some. He accepted 1 cup. Thank you. They stood side by side in comfortable silence. After a while, Amara smiled. When I first met you, I thought you disliked everyone. Min Jae looked amused. I probably did. She laughed softly. And now, he thought for a moment, I've realized I was protecting myself from being hurt. She looked at him. You don't have to do that all the time. He met her eyes. Perhaps because someone reminded me that healing is possible. Their eyes remained locked for several quiet seconds. The night air was cool. The city lights shimmered beyond the hills. Without saying a word, Min Jae gently draped his suit jacket over Amara's shoulders. You'll catch a cold. She smiled. And what about you? I'll be fine. She wrapped the jacket around herself. It carried the faint scent of cedar wood and rain. For reasons she couldn't explain, it made her feel safe. Neither of them noticed a tiny camera hidden among the flowering bushes below the veranda. A red recording light blinked once, then disappeared. Someone had been watching every moment. Late that night, Mr. Han received an anonymous package addressed only to Kong Min Jae. Inside was a single flash drive. No note, no return address. He inserted it into a secure computer. A grainy video began to play. The timestamp read, October 14th, 26 years ago. As the footage cleared, everyone in the security room froze. Standing beside Grace Okoye and Chairman Kong Ji-hoon was Hope Okoye, alive, and she was pointing directly at someone just outside the camera's view. The security room was silent. Only the faint hum of the computer filled the air. Mr. Han leaned closer to the monitor. Min Jae stood beside him, his expression unreadable. Professor Lee slowly removed his glasses. Amara could hardly breathe. The grainy video continued to play. Though the picture was old and slightly blurred, 3 familiar faces were unmistakable. Grace Okoye, Chairman Kong Ji-hoon, Hope Okoye. They stood in front of the unfinished Horizon Foundation building, smiling as they discussed blueprints spread across a wooden table. For a few precious moments, it looked like nothing more than a dream shared between close friends. Then, the camera shook violently. Someone behind the camera whispered, "They're coming." Grace immediately looked up. Her smile disappeared. Chairman Kong quickly gathered the documents. Hope turned toward the road leading to the construction site. Several black luxury cars were approaching. The recording captured only part of what happened next. Men in expensive suits stepped out of the vehicles. One of them pointed angrily toward the foundation plans. The conversation was too far away to hear clearly, but their body language spoke volumes. This wasn't a business meeting. It was a confrontation. Suddenly, Hope secretly looked toward the hidden camera. She realized someone was recording. Without alerting the others, she pointed directly toward one of the men standing beside the cars. The video froze for a second before becoming clearer. Mr. Han quickly enlarged the image. The room fell silent. Amara's eyes widened. The man was young then, perhaps in his early 30s, but his face was unmistakable. Silver hair, sharp features, cold eyes. It was the same mysterious man, now hunting them. Professor Lee whispered, "So, it really was him." Min Jae slowly clenched his fists. "You know him?" Professor Lee nodded. His voice was heavy with regret. "His name is Seo Hyun-chul. He was once Chairman Kang's closest business partner." Amara looked shocked. "He was his friend?" "Yes." Professor Lee sighed. "They built companies together. They trusted each other." "So what happened?" Amara asked softly. Professor Lee closed his eyes. When Ji-hoon refused to sell the Horizon Foundation land for commercial development, their friendship ended. But none of us imagined how far Seo Hyun-chul would go. Just then, the old recording resumed. Hope suddenly shouted something. Although there was no sound, her lips were clear enough to read. Mr. Han replayed the clip several times. Then he whispered, "She's saying, hide the evidence." The screen went black. The recording ended. No one spoke. Min Jae finally broke the silence. That wasn't just an argument. It was the beginning of a cover-up. Professor Lee nodded sadly, and Hope disappeared only 3 days later. A chill swept through the room. Later that evening, Amara sat alone in the mansion's music room. A grand piano stood near the window. She gently touched one of the keys. A soft note echoed through the room. She smiled. My mother loved music. She played a simple melody Grace had taught her as a little girl. The tune was gentle, peaceful, filled with hope. Unknown to her, Min Jae had stopped outside the door. He didn't interrupt. He simply listened. The melody awakened memories of his grandfather quietly humming the same tune decades earlier. When Amara finished playing, she turned and saw him. "Oh, I didn't know anyone was there." Min Jae smiled softly. "My grandfather used to hum that melody." Her eyes widened. "My mother taught it to me." They looked at each other in stunned silence. The same melody passed from one family to another across continents. It felt as though Grace and Chairman Kong were still connecting them, even after all these years. "You play beautifully," Min Jae said. Amara laughed shyly. "Only a little." She looked at the piano. "Would you like to learn?" Min Jae raised an eyebrow. "I've never played." "Then today can be your first lesson." He hesitated. Finally, he sat beside her on the piano bench. Amara gently placed his fingers on the keys. "No, relax your hand." "Like this." For a brief moment, her hand rested lightly over his. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them wanted to move. The quiet room was filled with nothing but the soft sound of the piano, and two hearts beginning to trust one another. Outside the half-open door, Mrs. Choi smiled knowingly. Professor Lee chuckled. "I believe Grace and Ji-hoon would be very happy." But happiness rarely lasts for long. At that very moment, a black drone hovered high above the mansion. Its camera zoomed in on the music room window. Miles away, Seo Hyun-chul watched the live feed. He smiled coldly. "So, they're already growing close." He turned toward one of his men. "That makes things easier." The man frowned. What are your orders, Chairman Seo? Seo Hyun-chul looked at Amara's smiling face on the monitor. His voice became chillingly calm. If Kang Min-jae won't surrender the evidence, then we'll use the one person he has already begun to care about. As Amara left the music room, her phone vibrated. An unknown number had sent a single message. Attached was a recent photograph, taken only minutes earlier. It showed her and Min-jae sitting together at the piano. Below it were 7 chilling words. The next picture will be your funeral. Amara stopped walking. The smile on her face disappeared. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She stared at the anonymous message again. The photograph had clearly been taken from outside the mansion. Someone had been watching them. Not yesterday. Not this morning. Just minutes ago. A cold shiver ran down her spine. Min-jae immediately noticed a change in her expression. Amara? She tried to hide the phone. It's nothing. His eyes remained fixed on her face. You've said that before. And both times it wasn't true. She looked down. I don't want to cause more problems. He stepped closer, his voice calm and reassuring. You're not the problem. The people threatening you are. For a moment, Amara hesitated. Then she handed him the phone. Min-jae read the message. His jaw tightened. The warmth in his eyes disappeared, replaced by the calm determination that had made him one of Korea's most respected business leaders. He immediately called Mr. Han. Seal the estate. No one enters. No one leaves. Deploy the drone detection system. Mr. Han's voice came through instantly. Right away, young master. Within seconds, the peaceful estate transformed into a secure compound. Security vehicles moved into position. Electronic jammers activated around the property. Guards searched the gardens. The quiet night became alive with urgency. Amara watched everything in silence. I'm sorry. Min-jae turned to her. For what? If I had never come to Seoul, none of this would be happening. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. No, if you hadn't come, my grandfather's promise would have died. His words settled gently in her heart. For the first time since leaving Nigeria, she no longer felt like an outsider. She felt protected. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Seoul, Seo Hyun-chul calmly watched the live security reports on multiple screens. One of his assistants spoke nervously. Chairman, the Khan estate is now fully locked down. Seo smiled faintly. Good. They're behaving exactly as I expected. The assistant looked confused. Should we cancel tomorrow's operation? Seo slowly shook his head. No, we won't attack the mansion. We'll make them leave it. He opened a file containing an old map. At its center was one location circled in red. Horizon Foundation construction site. He whispered, everything ends where it began. The next morning, sunlight filled the breakfast room. Despite the tension of the previous night, Mrs. Choi insisted everyone eat together. Fear grows stronger on an empty stomach, she said with a smile. Amara laughed softly. My mother used to say something similar. What did she say? Even bad news can wait until after breakfast. The room filled with gentle laughter. Even Min-jae smiled. As they ate, Professor Lee entered carrying an old leather notebook. I found something. Everyone looked up. He carefully placed a notebook on the table. It belonged to Hopokoye. Amara's eyes widened. My aunt's diary? Professor Lee nodded. It was hidden inside the chamber beneath the mansion. Min-jae slowly opened the worn pages. Most had faded with age, but one entry remained perfectly clear. It was dated 3 days before Hope disappeared. He read aloud, If anything happens to me, don't search for my body. Search for the truth. The truth is buried beneath the first stone we placed together. Silence followed. Amara frowned. The first stone. Professor Lee suddenly stood. The foundation stone. Min-jae looked up. The one at the Horizon construction site. Professor Lee nodded. If Hope left evidence, that's where we'll be. Mr. Han entered hurriedly. Young master, our survey team checked the site. And the land is scheduled for demolition. When? Mr. Han answered quietly. This afternoon. The room froze. If the evidence was buried beneath the original foundation stone, they had only a few hours left. Min Jae stood immediately. "We're leaving?" Mr. Han hesitated. "Sir, it could be a trap." Min Jae looked toward Amara. "I know, but if we don't go, we may lose the truth forever." Amara slowly stood beside him. "I'm coming too." "No, it's dangerous." She met his eyes with quiet determination. "My mother and my aunt protected this dream. I won't hide while someone tries to erase it." For several seconds, they simply looked at one another. Finally, Min Jae nodded. "Then you stay beside me. I promise." She smiled gently. "I wasn't planning to be anywhere else." As the convoy of black vehicles left the Kong estate, none of them noticed a delivery truck parked across the street. Inside, a hidden camera recorded every movement. The driver picked up his radio. "They've taken the bait." Seo Hyun-chul smiled as he listened. "Excellent. Prepare the site." The final act begins. As Min Jae's convoy approached the abandoned Horizon Foundation construction site, Amara looked through the window. Her heart suddenly skipped a beat. Standing alone beside the cracked foundation stone was a woman who looked exactly like the young Hope Okoye in the old photograph. The convoy came to a slow stop. Dust drifted through the cool afternoon air as the abandoned construction site came into view. Broken concrete pillars stood like silent witnesses to a dream that had never been completed. Rusted scaffolding leaned against unfinished walls. Wild grass had grown through the cracked pavement. At the center of it all, a single woman stood beside a weathered foundation stone. She wore a long beige coat and a wide-brimmed hat. The gentle wind lifted strands of her dark hair. Amara's heartbeat echoed in her ears. It can't be." Min Jae looked through the windshield. "Stay inside the vehicle." But Amara couldn't take her eyes off the woman. She looked almost identical to the photograph of Hope Okoye. The same graceful posture, the same warm eyes, the same gentle smile. The woman slowly removed her hat. She looked directly at Amara. Then she smiled. Not the smile of a stranger. The smile of someone who had been waiting. "My child." Amara's breath caught. How does she know me? Before anyone could move, Mr. Han signaled the security team. "Perimeter first." Within seconds, security officers spread across the site, checking every building, rooftop, and entrance. One of them spoke into his radio. "Area 1 is clear. Area 2 is clear." Another voice replied. "Nothing suspicious on the western side." Min Jae finally stepped out of the vehicle. He opened Amara's door. "Stay close." She nodded. Together, they walked toward the mysterious woman. The distance between them slowly disappeared. 10 meters. 5. 3. The woman looked at Amara with tears in her eyes. "You have your mother's smile." Amara stopped. Her voice trembled. "Who are you?" The woman gently reached into her handbag. The security officers immediately became alert. "Don't move." She slowly removed an old photograph. It was the same picture Amara had seen before. Grace Okoye, Chairman Kong Ji-hoon, Professor Lee, Hope Okoye. But this copy had something different. Written across the back were the words, "For my daughter if I cannot return." Amara's eyes filled with tears. "My mother never showed me this." The woman smiled sadly, because she never had it. She handed the photograph to Amara. "My name is Hannah Kim. I was Hope's closest friend." Professor Lee, who had just arrived, gasped. "Hannah, you survived?" She nodded, barely. Professor Lee embraced her warmly. "I searched for you. I know, but it wasn't safe for either of us." Min Jae studied her carefully. "You knew Hope for many years. Then tell us, what happened?" Hannah looked toward the abandoned building. Her smile faded. Hope discovered financial records, illegal payments, bribes, land theft. The Horizon Foundation wasn't just standing in the way of greed. It threatened to expose an entire criminal network. Amara listened carefully. "And my aunt." Hannah lowered her eyes. "The night before she disappeared, she gave me something. From inside her coat, Hannah carefully removed a small metal box. It was old, scratched, covered in dust. She placed it gently into Amara's hands. I promise, Hope, that only someone from Grace's family would ever open it. Amara stared at the box. What is inside? I never looked. I gave my word. Min Jae nodded respectfully, just like my grandfather. Before Mara could open the box, a loud engine roared across the construction site. Everyone turned. A massive demolition excavator burst through the front gate. Behind it came several black SUVs. Mr. Han shouted, "Protect Miss Amara." The excavator accelerated directly toward the old foundation stone. Its steel bucket rose high into the air. Hannah's face turned pale. They're trying to destroy it. Min Jae immediately took Amara's hand. "Run!" Security officers rushed forward to stop the machine. The ground shook beneath its heavy tracks. Concrete cracked. Dust filled the air. Amara clutched the metal box tightly against her chest. Inside, something rattled. A tiny metallic sound, as if another key, or another secret, had been waiting inside all along. Just before the excavator's steel bucket struck the foundation stone, a deafening gunshot echoed across the construction site. Everything stopped. One security officer shouted, "Someone's been hit." Amara turned in horror, only to see Kong Min Jae slowly collapsing to one knee, his white shirt stained with blood. Time seemed to freeze. "Kong Min Jae." Amara's voice echoed across the abandoned construction site. She ran toward him just as he dropped to one knee. A crimson stain spread across the sleeve of his white shirt. The bullet had grazed his upper arm. Pain flashed across his face, but his eyes never left Amara. "I'm all right," he said through clenched teeth. "No, you're not." She knelt beside him, her hands trembling. "You've been shot." Min Jae managed a faint smile. "I've had worse." "Don't joke with me." Tears filled Amara's eyes. "You promised you'd stay safe, and I intend to keep that promise." Mr. Han rushed over with two security officers. "Young master, the shooter is on the eastern rooftop." "Go," Min Jae ordered. "Protect Miss Amara first." Mr. Han hesitated. "But, sir, that's an order." "Yes, sir." Within seconds, the security team moved into position. The sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the abandoned buildings as they searched for the attacker. Professor Lee quickly removed his jacket and pressed it gently against Min Jae's wounded arm. "The bleeding isn't severe. We need a doctor immediately." Hannah looked around anxiously. The foundation stone. Everyone turned. The excavator had stopped only a few meters away. Its driver had abandoned the machine and fled during confusion. The ancient stone remained standing, cracked, but still standing. Amara looked down at the small metal box Hope had left behind. Her heart told her they had not come this far to walk away now. She looked at Min Jae. "I'm going to open it." He nodded. "You should." With shaking hands, Amara carefully unlocked the rusted clasp. The lid creaked open. Inside, there was no money, no jewelry, no priceless treasure. Only three simple items: a small brass key, a faded cassette tape, and a handwritten letter. Professor Lee smiled sadly. That was Hope. She always believed the truth was worth more than gold. Amara unfolded the letter. The paper had yellowed with age, yet the handwriting remained beautifully clear. "If you are reading this, then I could not protect the truth myself. Do not seek revenge for me. Seek justice. The evidence is hidden beneath the first foundation stone. The brass key opens a compartment. The cassette contains the meeting they tried to erase forever." The entire group fell silent. Mr. Han looked toward the cracked foundation stone. "So the evidence is still here." Min Jae slowly stood despite the pain. "We finished this today." "You shouldn't even be standing," Amara protested. He looked at her with quiet determination. "My grandfather spent 26 years waiting for this moment. I'm not leaving." Amara sighed. "You really are stubborn." A faint smile crossed his face. "So I've been told." Despite the danger, she couldn't help smiling back. For a brief moment, the fear disappeared. Their eyes met. Neither of them noticed Professor Lee quietly smiling. He whispered to Mrs. Choi, who had just arrived with the medical team, they're becoming each other's strength. Mrs. Choi nodded gently, just as Grace and Chairman Kong once were. A medic carefully wrapped Min Jae's injured arm. The bullet only grazed you. You were fortunate. Min Jae glanced toward Amara. I know. Together, they approached the foundation stone. Professor Lee brushed away decades of dust. Near the base, a tiny brass lock became visible. Amara inserted the key. It fit perfectly. She turned it slowly. Click. A hidden compartment opened beneath the stone. Inside rested a weatherproof steel container. Mr. Han carefully lifted it out. It hasn't been disturbed. Min Jae nodded. Open it. The container held stacks of original documents, property records, financial ledgers, signed agreements, photographs, and a sealed envelope marked to be opened only in the presence of the truth. Before anyone could touch it, police sirens echoed in the distance. Dozens of vehicles approached the construction site. At the front, a black luxury sedan came to a stop. Its rear door opened slowly. Seo Hyun-chul stepped out. He looked at the open compartment, then at the steel container. Instead of panic, he smiled. A calm, confident, dangerous smile. You've worked very hard to find that. His voice echoed across the silent construction site. But I'm afraid you're about 26 years too late. Seo Hyun-chul slowly raised his right hand. Behind him, a distinguished elderly woman stepped out of the sedan. The moment Amara saw her face, the metal box slipped from her hands. Her eyes filled with disbelief. The woman looked exactly like Hope Okoye, only 26 years older. She spoke one sentence that changed everything. Amara, I've waited my whole life to meet you. The entire construction site fell silent. Even the police officers froze. Amara could not move. Her eyes remained fixed on the elderly woman who had stepped out of Seo Hyun-chul's car. The resemblance was undeniable. The same gentle eyes, the same graceful smile. Only time had added silver strands to her dark hair and gentle lines to her face. The woman slowly walked forward. Tears shimmered in her eyes. Amara, my little niece. Amara's voice trembled. And Hope? The woman nodded. Yes, it's me. For a moment, Amara simply stood there. Her heart wanted to believe, but her mind remembered everything she had learned. Hope had disappeared. Everyone believed she was dead. Professor Lee slowly stepped forward, his eyes filled with tears. Hope, I searched for you. Hope smiled sadly. I know. I saw your search, but I couldn't come back. Professor Lee's voice cracked. Why? Hope looked toward Seo Hyun-chul, because every day he reminded me that if I returned, Grace and her daughter would die. Amara covered her mouth. So, you stayed away to protect us? Hope nodded. I watched you grow from afar. I celebrated your birthdays in silence. I cried when your mother became ill. I wanted to run to both of you, but I couldn't risk your lives. Amara could no longer hold back. She ran forward. Hope opened her arms. The two embraced tightly. Years of separation, years of unanswered questions, years of pain, melted into tears. Professor Lee quietly wiped his eyes. Mrs. Choi smiled through her tears. Even several police officers lowered their heads respectfully. Min Jae watched silently. He had witnessed many business victories in his life. None had been as meaningful as this reunion. After a long moment, Hope gently held Amara's face. You become exactly the woman your mother prayed you would be. Amara smiled through her tears. I missed you without even knowing you. Hope kissed her forehead. And I've loved you every single day. The emotional reunion ended when Seo Hyun-chul began clapping slowly. The sound echoed across the construction site. Beautiful. Very beautiful. His smile remained cold. I've waited 26 years for this family reunion. Min Jae stepped forward. Your game is over, Seo. Seo laughed quietly. Is it? He looked toward the steel container. You believe those documents will destroy me. He shrugged. They're only part of the story. Hope's expression suddenly changed. Don't listen to him. He's trying to distract you. CO smiled. No, Hope. I think it's time everyone learned the whole truth. He slowly reached into his coat. Police officers immediately raised their weapons. Don't move. CO ignored them. Instead of pulling out a weapon, he removed another faded photograph. He held it high for everyone to see. It showed Grace Okoye, Chairman Kang Ji-hoon, Hope Okoye, and a little boy, no older than 6. Min Jae frowned. I've never seen that child before. Hope closed her eyes. No. Please don't. CO's smile widened. The boy grew up. And today, he stands among us. Everyone looked around in confusion. CO slowly pointed across the construction site. Not at Min Jae, not at Professor Lee, not at Amara. He pointed at Mr. Han. The loyal secretary stood frozen. His face lost all color. Min Jae stared at him in disbelief. Mr. Han, what is he talking about? Mr. Han lowered his head. His hands trembled. After years of absolute loyalty, he finally whispered, I've been trying to tell you, but I never found the courage. The construction site fell silent once more. The man Min Jae trusted more than anyone was somehow connected to the greatest secret of the Horizon Foundation. Mr. Han slowly looked up, tears filling his eyes. Then he spoke the words no one expected to hear. I wasn't hired by your grandfather. He adopted me, and suddenly, 26 years of hidden history began to make sense. No one spoke. The wind swept gently across the abandoned Horizon Foundation site, carrying dust through the broken concrete pillars. Min Jae stared at Mr. Han. You were adopted by my grandfather? Mr. Han slowly nodded. Yes. My birth name was Han Jisoo. I was 6 years old when Chairman Kong found me. Professor Lee suddenly remembered. The little boy, the orphan from the community center. Mr. Han smiled sadly. You remember? Professor Lee nodded. Your parents died in a tragic accident. You hardly spoke to anyone. Mr. Han looked toward the unfinished Horizon Foundation building. Chairman Kong visited the community center every weekend. He never came with photographers. He never announced his donations. He simply sat with us. He listened to us. He treated every child like family. Amara smiled through her tears. That sounds exactly like the man my mother described. Mr. Han continued. One rainy afternoon, I asked him a question. Min Jae listened carefully. What did you ask? Mr. Han's eyes became distant. I asked him, can someone choose to become my father? Silence filled the construction site. Professor Lee quietly wiped away a tear. Mr. Han smiled softly. He knelt beside me. He looked into my eyes. And he said, family is not built only by blood. It is built by love, loyalty, and the promises we keep. He completed the legal adoption 1 year later. Min Jae lowered his head. My grandfather never told me. He wanted me to earn my place, Mr. Han replied. He never wanted me treated differently. I asked him to let me serve the family quietly, and he agreed. Amara looked at Mr. Han with new understanding. So all these years, you weren't just his secretary. Mr. Han smiled. I was his son, and he was the greatest father I could have asked for. A respectful silence followed. Even the police officers lowered their heads. Chairman Kong Ji-hoon's kindness had reached far beyond business. It had changed lives. CO Hyun-chul watched the emotional moment with little expression. Then he sighed. Touching. But sentiment won't erase history. He turned toward Hope. You should tell them the rest. Hope's smile faded. She looked at Amara. There's one truth I kept hidden. Amara gently took her aunt's hand. Whatever it is, I'm ready. Hope nodded slowly. The night I disappeared, I wasn't kidnapped immediately. I went willingly. Everyone stared at her. Professor Lee frowned. Willingly. Hope nodded. CO Hyun-chul threatened to destroy the Horizon Foundation. He also threatened Grace. And he threatened the children who had already been promised scholarships. He offered me a choice: disappear or watch innocent families suffer. Amara's eyes filled with tears. So you sacrifice yourself. Hope smiled sadly. I believe I could stop him from the inside. Seo Hyun-chul folded his arms. And for many years, she almost succeeded. Hope looked directly at him. But evil always demands a higher price. Seo's expression hardened. I offered you everything. Wealth, power, a place beside me. Hope answered firmly. You offer me comfort. My sister offered me purpose. The choice was never difficult. For the first time, Seo Hyun-chul's calm expression cracked. Anger flashed across his face. You still think kindness wins? Hope stepped closer. No, I know it does. She pointed toward Amara, then toward Min Jae, then toward Mr. Han. Look around you. You spent 26 years building fear. Grace and Ji-hoon spent 26 years planning hope. Today, hope is standing together. The words echoed across the construction site. Min Jae quietly reached for Amara's hand. This time, he didn't hesitate. She looked at him. Their fingers intertwined naturally. Neither of them spoke. Nothing needed to be said. They both understood. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Just then, a police inspector hurried toward the group, carrying a sealed evidence bag. Mr. Kong, we found something inside the steel container. He carefully removed a small digital memory card. It wasn't listed in the inventory. Professor Lee adjusted his glasses. What could be on it? The inspector handed it to Min Jae. It appears untouched. Min Jae looked toward the mobile forensic unit parked nearby. Let's see what my grandfather wanted us to find. Minutes later, the memory card was inserted into a secure computer. A video file appeared on the screen. The recording date read, 3 days before Chairman Kang Ji-hoon's death. Everyone fell silent. Min Jae's hands trembled slightly. His grandfather had left one final message. The screen flickered to life. Chairman Kang Ji-hoon appeared, older but smiling warmly. He looked directly into the camera. Then he spoke words that brought tears to everyone's eyes. If you're watching this, then Amara has finally come to Seoul. He smiled gently. And if she has, tell my grandson that it's time for him to stop carrying the world alone. The temporary forensic station became completely silent. No one dared to interrupt. Chairman Kang Ji-hoon's image filled the screen. Though age had weakened his body, his eyes still carried the same kindness that had changed countless lives. He smiled warmly. If you're watching this, then Amara has finally come to Seoul. Amara covered her mouth with both hands. Tears flowed freely down her cheeks. It felt as though the man she had never met was speaking directly to her. Chairman Kong continued, and if she has, tell my grandson that it's time for him to stop carrying the world alone. Min Jae lowered his head. His grandfather knew him better than anyone. The chairman gave a soft laugh. Min Jae, when you were a little boy, you believed that strength meant never crying. I never corrected you, because I knew one day life itself would teach you. He paused for a moment. If you're listening now, I hope you've learned that the strongest people are those who protect others without losing their kindness. Min Jae closed his eyes. Every word pierced his heart. The chairman turned slightly toward the camera, as if speaking to Amara. My dear Amara, I wish I could have welcomed you myself. I wanted to thank you. Amara whispered softly. Thank me? The chairman smiled. Because your mother reminded me that success means nothing if it cannot improve someone else's life. Grace changed me. She made me a better man. Hope quietly wiped away her tears. That's exactly who my sister was. The recording continued. Many people believed the Horizon Foundation was only a building. They were wrong. It was never about concrete. It was never about land. It was always about people. Buildings can fall, but compassion can never be demolished. Professor Lee nodded slowly. That was Ji-hoon. He always saw beyond money. The chairman reached for a small notebook resting beside him. If my family and Grace's family are watching this together, then my greatest wish has already come true. He smiled gently. I have one final request. Do not waste your lives chasing revenge. Justice is necessary. But hatred is a prison. If you allow bitterness to control your hearts, then those who destroyed our dream will have won. The room remained completely silent. Even Seo Hyun-chul, now standing under police guard, watched the screen without speaking. The chairman looked directly into the camera once more. Min-jae, take care of Amara. Not because I asked you, but because she carries the same courage her mother carried. He smiled. And Amara, take care of my grandson. He pretends to be made of stone, but he has always had the softest heart. Mrs. Choi laughed gently through her tears. Chairman, you knew him too well. A faint smile appeared on Min-jae's face. Amara looked at him. So, you've been pretending all these years. He chuckled quietly. It seems my grandfather exposed me. Everyone laughed softly. For the first time in many days, the weight of fear lifted. The chairman's expression became serious again. There is one final gift. It isn't hidden beneath the foundation. It isn't inside a safe. It cannot be stolen. He placed his hand over his heart. It lives inside every person who chooses kindness over fear. If you protect that gift, the Horizon Foundation will never truly disappear. The video slowly came to an end. Just before the screen turned black, the chairman gave one last warm smile. I'm proud of all of you. The screen faded to darkness. No one spoke. The silence was filled not with grief, but with hope. After several moments, Min-jae looked toward Amara. My grandfather left us a mission. Amara nodded. And we'll finish it. Together. Professor Lee smiled proudly. Then let today be remembered, not as the day we uncovered the past, but as the day we began building the future. Just then, a young police officer hurried toward the group. Mr. Kong, we've completed the search of Seo Hyun-chul's private office. Min-jae turned. What did you find? The officer handed him a sealed evidence folder. Among the documents, we found the original registration papers for the Horizon Foundation. Professor Lee's eyes widened. The originals? Yes. The officer smiled. And according to these documents, the foundation was never legally dissolved. Everyone looked at one another in amazement. Hope covered her face as tears streamed down her cheeks. Amara whispered, my mother's dream is still alive. As everyone celebrated the incredible discovery, Amara noticed one final envelope inside the evidence folder. Unlike the others, it was addressed in Grace Okoye's handwriting. The front simply read, to the day when hope finally returns. With trembling hands, Amara slowly reached for the envelope, unaware that the words inside would change not only her future with Min-jae, but the future of thousands of young people across Africa and Korea. The late afternoon sun bathed the abandoned Horizon Foundation site in a warm golden light. For the first time in decades, the place no longer felt abandoned. It felt alive. Hope carefully handed the cream-colored envelope to Amara. Her voice trembled. I've waited 26 years to see this open. Amara looked at the familiar handwriting. She gently traced her mother's name with her fingertips. Her heart beat faster. Min-jae stood quietly beside her. Without saying a word, he gently squeezed her hand. I'm here. Amara smiled through her tears. I know. Taking a deep breath, she slowly opened the envelope. Inside rested a single handwritten letter and a pressed cherry blossom flower. The flower had faded over the years, yet it remained perfectly preserved. Professor Lee smiled. Grace picked that blossom herself. Amara unfolded the letter. The paper was old. The ink had slightly faded, but every word was still clear. She began to read aloud. My beloved family, if this letter is being read, then I believe God has answered a prayer I carried in my heart for many years. I pray that Hope is safe. Hope quietly wiped away her tears. I am Grace. I finally came home. Amara continued. If my daughter is standing beside Chairman Kang's grandson, then life has been kinder than I ever imagined. Min Jae lowered his head respectfully. Grace's words felt almost prophetic. Please remember this. The Horizon Foundation was never meant to make famous people. It was created to give ordinary young people extraordinary opportunities. Professor Lee nodded proudly. That was always her dream. Amara continued reading. If the foundation is ever restored, promise me it will welcome students not because they are rich, but because they're determined. Mrs. Choi smiled warmly. She never forgot those who struggled. Another page slipped gently from the envelope. It was a rough sketch. At the top was a hand-drawn design of a beautiful campus. Beneath it were Grace's handwritten notes. A library where every book is free. A music hall where cultures meet. Scholarships for African and Korean students. No child turned away because of poverty. Amara's tears fell onto the page. This was her dream. Min Jae looked carefully at the sketch. We can build this. Amara looked up. You really believe that? He smiled. No, I know we can. Hope looked at both of them. Grace would be proud. Just then, the Nigerian ambassador stepped forward. I believe this dream deserves more than words. Everyone turned toward him. He smiled. The embassy is prepared to support discussions for an educational partnership. Ms. Kim from the Korean Ministry of Education nodded. And our ministry is willing to begin formal talks as well. The room filled with quiet excitement. Professor Lee laughed softly. Ji-hoon, you finally did it. No, Hope corrected gently. They did. She looked at Amara and Min Jae. The next generation. As everyone discussed the future, Mr. Han quietly approached Min Jae. Young master, what is it? The financial investigators have completed their report, and they recovered almost all the Horizon Foundation assets that were frozen decades ago. Min Jae looked surprised. Enough to begin again? Mr. Han smiled. More than enough. Amara's eyes widened. So, my mother's dream can truly become reality. Professor Lee folded his hands gratefully. Sometimes justice takes many years. But when it finally arrives, it changes everything. As the sun slowly began to set, Min Jae walked a few steps away from the group. He looked across the empty land where the unfinished building still stood. Amara joined him. What are you thinking? He smiled softly. I'm trying to imagine what this place will look like one day. She followed his gaze. I can already see it. A library. A garden. Students from Lagos. Students from Seoul. Learning together. Min Jae looked at her with admiration. You always see hope. She smiled. My mother taught me that hope grows when people choose to plant it. Without thinking, Min Jae gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face. Their eyes met. The world around them seemed to disappear. Neither hurried, neither looked away. The moment was quiet, gentle, real. Just as Min Jae leaned a little closer, Mr. Han's phone rang loudly. He answered immediately. His smile vanished. Young master. The police have discovered a hidden underground vault beneath CO Hyunchul's headquarters. Min Jae frowned. What was inside? Mr. Han looked at everyone. There are hundreds of files. Names. Photographs. Financial records. He paused before adding. And a list of every student who was supposed to receive the very first Horizon Foundation scholarship. Hope covered her mouth. Professor Lee smiled through tears. They kept a list. All these years. As the police carefully examined the recovered scholarship list, one name near the top caught Amar's attention. She froze. It was written in Grace Okoye's handwriting. First honorary student, Kong Min Jae. Confused, she looked up at Professor Lee. He smiled knowingly and said, There's a beautiful story behind that name. One your mother never got the chance to tell. The construction site had grown quiet once again. The evening sky glowed with shades of orange and gold. Amara looked at the scholarship list in disbelief. She read the first line again. First honorary student, Kong Min Jae. She looked at Professor Lee. I don't understand. Min Jae comes from one of the wealthiest families in Korea. Why would my mother place his name on a scholarship list? Professor Lee smiled warmly. It wasn't a financial scholarship. It was something much more precious. Min Jae looked equally confused. My grandfather never told me. Professor Lee nodded. He wasn't supposed to. He carefully unfolded another aged document from the recovered files. It was Grace's idea. Everyone gathered around. At the top of the page, Grace had written, "The Honorary Student Program." Professor Lee began reading. Some children inherit wealth. Some inherit responsibility. Both deserve guidance. The first honorary student will be Kong Min Jae, so that he never grows up believing money alone can change the world. Min Jae stood motionless. He had spent years trying to become a successful businessman. Only now did he understand what his grandfather had truly wanted for him. Professor Lee continued, "One day, when Min Jae is old enough, I hope he will walk beside my daughter. Not because of obligation, but because both of them choose to serve others." Amara smiled through her tears. "My mother wrote that." Hope laughed softly. "Grace always believed your lives would cross one day." Mrs. Choi smiled. Chairman Kong believed it too. Min Jae looked toward the horizon. "My grandfather never wanted me to become the richest man." Professor Lee shook his head. "No, he wanted you to become the kindest one." For a long moment, no one spoke. The words settled deep within Min Jae's heart. The following morning, the Kong estate was busier than it had been in years. Architects, lawyers, education officials, community leaders, everyone had gathered to discuss rebuilding the Horizon Foundation. The mansion that had once been filled with silence now echoed with hope. Amara walked through the hall, carrying several design sketches. Mrs. Choi smiled proudly. "You're becoming very busy." Amara laughed. "I never imagined I'd be helping design an international school." Mrs. Choi leaned closer. "And someone else seems very busy watching you." Amara looked confused. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Choi quietly pointed across the room. Min Jae was speaking with engineers. But every few moments, without realizing it, he looked toward Amara. When their eyes met, he quickly looked away. Mrs. Choi covered a smile. "He thinks no one notices." Amara laughed softly. "I notice." At that exact moment, Min Jae walked over. "What are you two smiling about?" Mrs. Choi answered immediately. "The weather." Min Jae looked out the window. "It isn't even sunny." Mrs. Choi burst into laughter. "Oh, young master, you still have much to learn." Even Mr. Han chuckled quietly. Min Jae looked completely puzzled. Amara couldn't stop laughing. Seeing her laugh so freely, he smiled too. Later that afternoon, Professor Lee gathered everyone in the mansion's library. "I've made a decision." Everyone turned toward him. "I'm old now. My work is nearly finished." He looked at Amara. "Grace trusted me." Then he looked at Min Jae. "Jihoon trusted me." He placed an old leather journal on the table. This journal contains every plan, every conversation, every dream we ever had for the Horizon Foundation. He gently pushed it toward them. "From today, it belongs to both of you." Amara carefully accepted it. "So the dream continues." Professor Lee smiled. "No, the dream begins." That evening, the estate gardens were filled with hundreds of glowing lanterns. Mrs. Choi had quietly arranged a small celebration. Nothing extravagant, just family, friends, and hope. Soft Korean music drifted through the evening air. The cherry blossoms danced in the breeze. Amara stood beneath the oldest tree. She looked up at the glowing lanterns. "They're beautiful." Min Jae walked beside her. "My grandfather released lanterns every year." "Why?" He said each lantern represented a dream that should never be forgotten. Amara smiled. "My mother used to light candles for the same reason." They stood together in peaceful silence. Min Jae finally spoke. "Amara?" She turned toward him. "Yes. I spent most of my life believing I had to face everything alone." He smiled gently. "You changed that." Amara's eyes softened. "You changed me too." A gentle breeze carried cherry blossom petals around them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Min-jae slowly reached into his pocket. He removed a simple silver friendship ring that had belonged to his grandfather. He looked at it for a moment, then placed it carefully in Amara's hand. My grandfather always believed this ring represented trust. I'd like you to keep it until the Horizon Foundation opens its doors. Amara looked at the ring with emotion. I'll protect it. I know you will. Their hands remained together for a quiet moment. Above them, a lantern drifted into the night sky. Then another, and another. As everyone watched the glowing lights rise together, no one noticed a lone figure standing beyond the estate gates. The figure quietly smiled before walking away into the darkness. Not every chapter of the past had been closed, and not every heart had chosen forgiveness. Just before midnight, Amara opened Professor Lee's journal. A folded page slipped onto the floor. It was an unfinished letter written by Chairman Kong. Across the top, in bold handwriting, were the words, "To Min-jae and Amara, read this only on the day you realize you'll become each other's home." The Kong estate was unusually quiet. The celebration had ended. The lanterns had disappeared into the night sky, leaving only the soft glow of moonlight over the cherry blossom garden. Amara sat alone in the library. Professor Lee's journal rested on the table before her. Beside it lay the unfinished letter written by Chairman Kong. She gently picked it up once more. Across the front, the familiar words seemed almost alive. "To Min-jae and Amara, read this only on the day you realize you become each other's home." She smiled softly. "No, I don't think we're there yet." With great respect, she carefully folded the letter and placed it back inside the journal. Some promises deserve the right time. Just then, a gentle knock came at the library door. "May I come in?" It was Min-jae. Amara smiled. "Of course." He stepped inside carrying 2 steaming cups of tea. "I thought you might still be awake." "You were right." He handed 1 cup to her. "My grandfather always said tea tastes better when it is shared." Amara laughed softly. "My mother used to say almost the same thing." They sat beside the large window, overlooking the peaceful garden. Neither felt the need to fill the silence. It was comfortable, natural, the kind of silence shared only between people who trusted each other. After a while, Min-jae spoke. "When all of this is over, what will you do?" Amara looked toward the stars. "I used to think I'd simply return to Nigeria. And now," she smiled thoughtfully, "now, I think a part of my heart will always belong to Seoul." Min-jae looked at her quietly. "And another part?" She turned toward him. "It will always belong to Nigeria." He nodded. "I understand. My grandfather always believed that home isn't limited to one place. He used to say, 'Home is wherever people are waiting for your safe return.'" Amara felt her heart warm. "I like that. So do I." For a few moments, they simply watched the moonlight dancing across the garden. Then Amara asked, "And what about you? When all this is finished, what do you want?" Min-jae smiled. "For the first time in many years, I don't want a bigger company. I don't want more success. I want to hear children laughing in the Horizon Foundation. I want students from Africa and Korea walking through the same doors. I want my grandfather's dream, and your mother's dream, to become their future." Amara looked at him with admiration. "That's a beautiful dream." He smiled. "I learned it from you." She laughed. "No, you learned it from your grandfather. I only reminded you." Their eyes met. Neither hurried to look away. Outside, a single cherry blossom petal drifted gently past the window. The next morning, construction crews arrived at the Horizon Foundation site. The old warning signs were removed. Surveyors carefully measured the land. Architects placed fresh blueprints across large tables. Hope stood beside Professor Lee, watching with tears in her eyes. "I never believed I'd see this day." Professor Lee smiled. "Neither did I." Nearby, Ambassador Bello and Ms. Kim shook hands. "This is only the beginning," Ambassador Bello said. "It will be a bridge between our nations." Ms. Kim nodded. and between generations. Reporters gathered at a respectful distance as Min Jae stepped onto a small stage. He looked at the crowd, then at Amara. Finally, he began speaking. 26 years ago, two friends dreamed of building more than a school. They dreamed of building understanding. They believed that young people from different cultures could learn together, grow together, and create a better future together. He paused. Today, we begin fulfilling that promise. The audience applauded warmly. Amara felt tears gathering once again. Not tears of sorrow, tears of gratitude. After the ceremony, a little Korean girl approached Amara. She looked about 8 years old. She held a drawing in her hands. "Excuse me." Amara knelt to meet her. "Hello." The little girl shyly handed over the picture. It showed two large trees. One stood beneath an African sunset, the other beneath Korean cherry blossoms. Their branches reached toward each other until they became one. Across the top, written in careful handwriting, were the words, "Friends grow stronger together." Amara smiled warmly. "Did you draw this?" The little girl nodded. "My teacher told us your story. I wanted to say thank you." Amara hugged her gently. "No." "Thank you." Min Jae watched from a distance. Mr. Han quietly smiled. "The chairman would have loved this." Professor Lee nodded. "He already does." As evening approached, workers carefully dug the first trench for the new foundation. A construction worker suddenly called out, "Sir, I found something." Everyone gathered around. Buried beneath the old foundation stone was a small copper time capsule. Its surface was engraved with two names, Grace Okoye, Kang Ji-hoon. Hope closed her eyes. "I remember. We buried that together." Min Jae carefully lifted the capsule. It had remained untouched for 26 years. What memories, what dreams had been waiting inside all this time? As Professor Lee gently cleaned the dust from the time capsule, he noticed a final engraving hidden beneath the soil. It simply read, "Do not open until the foundation welcomes its very first student." Everyone smiled. Some promises were still waiting for the perfect moment. Morning sunlight stretched across the horizon foundation grounds. For the first time in 26 years, the sound of construction replaced the silence. Excavators moved carefully across the land. Architects studied blueprints. Engineers measured every corner of the site. But before any building could begin, Professor Lee raised his hand. "Please, one more thing." The entire construction site became quiet. Workers removed their helmets. Officials paused their conversations. Professor Lee slowly walked to the center of the old foundation. In his hands was a small wooden box. "I have carried this with me for more than 2 decades. He opened the lid. Inside was a single red brick. The brick looked ordinary. Its edges were worn with age. But written across it in neat handwriting were 2 signatures. Grace Okoye, Kang Ji-hoon. Hope smiled through tears. "I remember that day. They each signed 1 brick. They said, 'Every great dream begins with something simple.'" Professor Lee carefully lifted the brick. This was supposed to become the first brick of the Horizon Foundation, but construction stopped, and I couldn't bear to throw it away. He turned toward Amara and Min Jae. "I believe the time has finally come." The crowd applauded softly. Min Jae accepted the brick with both hands. Then he looked at Amara. "This belongs to both families." She nodded. "Let's place it together." Standing side by side, they gently lowered the brick into its rightful place. As it touched the earth, the workers began applauding. Soon the applause spread across the entire construction site. Some smiled, some wiped away tears. Even the construction workers understood. They weren't just building a school. They were rebuilding a promise. Later that afternoon, the media gathered for a brief interview. One reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Kong, many people want to know why this project matters so much to you." Min Jae looked toward the new foundation, then at Amara. Finally, he answered, "Because wealth has little meaning if it ends with one generation. But education can change generations." The crowd nodded. Another reporter turned to Amara. Miss Okoye, if your mother were standing here today, what do you think she would say? Amara smiled gently. She looked toward the sky before answering. I think she'd remind us that no dream is too small when it begins with love. The audience applauded warmly. As the interviews ended, Mrs. Choi walked over carrying 2 lunchboxes. I had a feeling neither of you remembered to eat. Amara laughed. She's right. Min Jae smiled sheepishly. I forgot. Mrs. Choi shook her head. You two have inherited the same bad habit. She led them beneath a large cherry blossom tree overlooking the construction site. The 3 shared a simple meal together. Rice, grilled fish, fresh fruit, and, to Amara's delight, a small container of spicy jollof rice prepared by the estate chef. She tasted it and laughed. It's getting much better. Mrs. Choi winked. The chef has been taking lessons. Min Jae looked curious. From whom? Mrs. Choi pointed at Amara, our newest cooking instructor. Everyone laughed. For a little while, the pressure of investigations and old secrets faded away. They simply enjoyed being together. As the sun began to set, a small bus pulled up outside the construction site. The doors opened. About 20 children stepped out. Some were Korean. Some were African students already living in Seoul with their families. One little boy walked shyly toward Amara. Excuse me, will this really become our school? Amara knelt beside him. She smiled warmly. Yes, it will. The boy's eyes sparkled. My dream is to become an engineer. Another little girl raised her hand. I want to become a doctor. A third child smiled. I want to become a music teacher. Min Jae looked at the children, then at the unfinished foundation. For the first time, he didn't see concrete. He saw futures waiting to begin. Professor Lee quietly whispered, This is exactly what Grace and Jihoon imagined. As evening fell, everyone prepared to leave. Amara noticed Min Jae standing alone near the newly placed brick. What are you thinking about? He smiled softly. I used to think I was rebuilding a building. He looked at the children boarding the bus. Now I realize we're rebuilding hope. Amara stepped beside him. And hope has a way of multiplying. Their hands brushed gently against each other. This time, neither of them pulled away. Above them, the first stars appeared over Seoul. And somewhere beyond those stars, it felt as though Grace Okoye and Chairman Kang Ji-hoon were smiling. Just as the last construction vehicle was leaving, one of the engineers rushed toward Min Jae holding an old metal survey marker. Sir, we discovered another underground chamber beneath the original foundation. Professor Lee's eyes widened. He whispered, No, I thought we had already found every secret. The engineer swallowed nervously. You need to see this, because someone has been inside that chamber recently. The construction site fell silent once again. Everyone turned toward the engineer. What do you mean? Min Jae asked calmly. Someone has been inside recently? The engineer wiped the dust from his gloves. We found fresh footprints. They couldn't have been more than a few days old. Mr. Han immediately became alert. Seal the area. No one enters until we inspect it. Within minutes, security officers surrounded the newly discovered entrance. Hidden beneath a thick steel plate was a narrow staircase leading underground. Unlike the first chamber beneath the Kong mansion, this one smelled of fresh earth. Someone had disturbed the dust recently. Professor Lee stared into the darkness. I've never seen this passage before. Hope slowly shook her head. Neither have I. Amara switched on a flashlight. Its beam stretched deep into the tunnel. Let's go. Min Jae looked at her. You stay behind me. She smiled. I knew you were going to say that. A small team descended carefully. Min Jae, Amara, Professor Lee, Hope, Mr. Han, and 2 security officers. Every step echoed to the underground passage. The air grew cooler. Finally, the tunnel opened into a circular stone room. It was much smaller than the first secret chamber. There were no bookshelves, no furniture, only a single wooden table standing in the center. On top of it rested a modern laptop, still powered on. The screen displayed only one sentence. I knew he would find this place. Everyone stopped. Mr. Han quickly scanned the room. No movement. No hidden exits. The laptop was connected to a portable battery that was still warm. Whoever was here left only a short time ago. Min Jae slowly approached the table. Another message appeared. Press enter. He looked toward the others. Professor Lee nodded. We've come this far. Min Jae pressed a key. A video began to play. To everyone's surprise, the person on the screen was not Seo Hyun-chul. It was Director Park. The recording appeared recent. He looked tired, but peaceful. If you're watching this, then I may already be dead. Amara's eyes widened. Don't say that. Director Park continued. I've spent 26 years trying to correct the greatest mistake of my life. I remained silent when I should have spoken. I believed fear would protect my family. It didn't. He took a slow breath. The truth you've uncovered is real. But there is one final piece you still don't know. The screen changed to an old map of Seoul. A red circle appeared around a modest neighborhood. There was never only one Horizon Foundation. Professor Lee frowned. What? Director Park nodded on the recording. Chairman Kong and Grace secretly purchased a second property. It wasn't meant to be a school. It was meant to be the first student residence. Hope gasped. I remember. Grace wanted students from different countries to live together. Director Park smiled faintly. Exactly. The building still exists. But no one knows its true purpose. The screen displayed an address. Min Jae immediately recognized it. I know that street. It's only 20 minutes from here. Director Park's expression became serious. If Seo Hyun-chul discovers that building before you, everything Grace and Chairman Kong protected will disappear forever. The recording suddenly glitched. Static filled the screen. Then Director Park looked directly into the camera. There is one more thing. I never betrayed Chairman Kong. I was working undercover for him. The room fell silent. Professor Lee slowly removed his glasses. I knew it. I knew Ji-hoon hadn't trusted the wrong man. Director Park smiled one last time. If you ever doubt whether people can change, remember me. The video ended. Silence filled the underground chamber. Amara whispered, he spent half his life trying to make things right. Min Jae nodded respectfully. And we'll make sure his sacrifice wasn't wasted. Just then, one of the security officers noticed something beside the laptop. Sir, there was another visitor. Everyone turned. Pressed into the dust beside the table was a fresh bouquet of white lilies. Hope slowly knelt beside them. She smiled through tears. These were Grace's favorite flowers. She gently touched one of the petals. They were placed here this morning. Amara looked around the empty chamber. Someone else still remembers. The question echoed in everyone's mind. Who had arrived before them, left flowers, prepared the laptop, and vanished without leaving a trace? As the group climbed back to the surface, Mr. Han's phone rang. He answered immediately. His expression changed. Young master, the address from Director Park's video. Someone has just reported smoke coming from the building. Min Jae didn't hesitate. Everyone into the vehicles. We're not losing another piece of my grandfather's dream. The convoy sped toward the old student residence, unaware that someone was already waiting for them inside. The convoy raced through the streets of Seoul. Police vehicles cleared the way. Their flashing lights reflected off rain-soaked roads as the old student residence came into view. It was a modest 3-story brick building tucked between newer apartment blocks. Its faded sign had long since disappeared. Vines climbed the outer walls. One window on the top floor released a thin trail of gray smoke. Amara stared through the windshield. This is it. Professor Lee smiled softly. Grace insisted it should never look luxurious. She wanted every student to feel equal the moment they walked through its doors. Min Jae stepped out of the vehicle. Fire department? Mr. Han answered immediately. They confirmed the smoke isn't from a major fire. It appears someone burned documents inside. Min Jae's expression hardened. We're not too late. I hope. Inside the building, the smell of smoke lingered in the air. Old wooden floors creaked beneath their feet. Despite the years of neglect, the residents still felt welcoming. A faded mural decorated one wall. Children of different races stood together beneath a bright blue sky. Above them were words written in both English and Korean. Knowledge builds bridges. Amara smiled through her tears. My mother painted this. Hope gently touched the mural. I helped her mix the colors. Mrs. Choi whispered, "It still feels alive." Mr. Han carefully inspected the ground floor. Someone searched every room. Drawers were opened, cabinets emptied, but they were looking for something specific. The group climbed to the second floor. Old student bedrooms lined the hallway. Each door carried a small brass nameplate. Room 1, Room 2, Room 3. Amara opened one of the doors. Inside stood 4 simple beds, bookshelves, study desks, a globe resting quietly in the corner. Nothing extravagant. Everything filled with purpose. Professor Lee smiled. Grace believed students should compete in kindness, not in comfort. As they reached the 3rd floor, a faint crackling sound echoed from the end of the corridor. Mr. Han raised his hand. "Stay behind me." They approached carefully. The smoke came from a fireplace. Several folders had been burned, but not completely. One file remained untouched beneath a fallen piece of wood. Amara carefully lifted it. Across the front was written, "Resident Register, First Intake." Inside were the names of 12 students. 6 from Korea, 6 from Africa. Each profile included dreams written in the student's own handwriting. I want to become a doctor. I want to build bridges. I want to teach children. I want to discover medicines. Hope wiped away another tear. They had already chosen the first students. Professor Lee nodded. They believed construction would finish within months. Min Jae slowly closed the file. We'll honor every one of these dreams. Suddenly, a soft sound echoed from upstairs. Everyone stopped. Mr. Han frowned. There's another floor? The engineer looked confused. The building plans only show 3. Professor Lee looked toward the ceiling. There shouldn't be. Amara noticed something unusual. One bookshelf wasn't fixed to the wall. She gently pushed it. With a deep rumble, the entire shelf slowly moved aside. Behind it, a narrow staircase climbed toward a hidden attic. Fresh footprints covered the dusty steps. Mr. Han quietly drew a flashlight. They're recent. Min Jae nodded. We go together. The attic was surprisingly bright. Sunlight filtered through small round windows. Dust floated gently through the air. Against one wall stood dozens of old trunks. Against another, a beautifully preserved upright piano. Amara walked toward it. A small framed photograph rested on top. It showed Grace laughing while sitting at that very piano. Beside her, Chairman Kong was trying to play a song and laughing because he kept pressing the wrong keys. Hope laughed through her tears. He never learned. Professor Lee smiled. He insisted he was improving. He wasn't. Everyone shared a quiet laugh. For a brief moment, the room felt less like a forgotten attic and more like a room waiting patiently for its family to return. Then Amara noticed something resting on the piano keys. A freshly folded white envelope. It hadn't gathered any dust. Someone had placed it there only hours earlier. Across the front, written in elegant handwriting, were the words, "To the builders of tomorrow." Min Jae carefully opened it. Inside was a single handwritten page. If you have reached this room, then you have already proven that hope cannot be buried. You are no longer searching for the Horizon Foundation. You have become the Horizon Foundation. There was no signature, only a small drawing of a cherry blossom beside an African baobab tree. Amara smiled. My mother used to draw that symbol. Hope looked closer. So did Jihoon. Professor Lee frowned thoughtfully. Then who wrote this? Before anyone could answer, a slow clap echoed from the doorway. Everyone turned. Standing in the attic entrance was Seo Hyun-chul. He wasn't surrounded by guards. He wasn't carrying a weapon. His expression was strangely calm. He looked around the room before speaking. So, you finally found a place where our story truly began. Seo Hyun-chul slowly looked at the old piano. His voice was quieter than anyone had ever heard it. I came here today, not to destroy what's left. He took a slow breath. I came because there's one truth, even I have hidden for 26 years. The room fell completely silent. Everyone waited for his next words. The hidden attic fell into complete silence. Every eye was fixed on Seo Hyun-chul. Mr. Han instinctively stepped in front of Amara. Police officers slowly raised their weapons. Chairman Seo, don't move. Seo Hyun-chul calmly lifted both hands. I didn't come here to fight. Min Jae's voice remained cold. You've said that before. And innocent people still suffered. Seo lowered his eyes. You're right. I have no excuse. The room remained silent. After a long pause, Seo slowly walked toward the old piano. His footsteps echoed across the wooden floor. He gently rested one hand on the polished wood. I remember this piano. Grace loved playing it. Ji-hoon could never keep up with her. Hope looked at him with disbelief. You remember those days? Seo smiled sadly. I remember every one of them. Professor Lee frowned. Then why? Why destroy everything? Seo looked out the attic window. Because I was weak. No one spoke. I wasn't born into wealth. I built my company from nothing. When investors threatened to leave. When politicians demanded favors. When powerful people offered me more money than I had ever imagined, I chose ambition over friendship. He closed his eyes. At first, I told myself it was only business. But one compromise became another, and another, until one day, I no longer recognized the man I had become. Hope's eyes filled with tears. You could have stopped. Seo nodded. I know. But every lie demanded another lie, and every betrayal demanded another betrayal. Min Jae looked directly at him. My grandfather tried to forgive you. Seo's eyes widened. You know, Professor Lee slowly reached into one of the old trunks. He removed a weathered notebook. It was in Ji-hoon's journal. He opened it carefully. There is one page I never showed anyone. He began reading. Seo is not my enemy. His fear has become his enemy. If one day he chooses to come back, do not close the door before he has a chance to knock. Seo's shoulders trembled. He slowly sat down on the old piano bench. Tears rolled silently down his face. Even after everything, Ji-hoon still believed I could change. Professor Lee quietly closed the journal. That was the kind of man he was. The room remained still. Amara slowly stepped forward. Min Jae gently touched her arm. It's all right, she whispered. She stopped only a few steps away from Seo. My mother once taught me something. Seo looked up. What? Forgiveness doesn't erase justice. But justice without mercy can leave every heart broken. Seo lowered his head. I don't deserve your kindness. Amara answered softly. None of us deserve kindness. That's why it's a gift. Hope smiled through her tears. Grace would have said exactly that. Just then, Police Inspector Choi entered the attic, carrying a file. Chairman Seo, we've completed our investigation. Seo stood quietly. I know why you're here. The inspector nodded. You will answer for your crimes before the law. Seo looked toward Min Jae, then toward Hope, finally toward Amara. I'll tell the court everything. No more lies. No more hiding. I owe Ji-hoon that much. The inspector respectfully placed handcuffs on him. Seo did not resist. As he was escorted toward the door, he stopped one last time. He looked at the old piano, then quietly said, I'm sorry, Grace. I'm sorry, Ji-hoon. I was too late to become the friend you believed I could be. He walked away. No one celebrated, because everyone understood. Justice had finally arrived, but it could never return the years that had been lost. The following week, construction officially began on the New Horizon Foundation. Workers from Korea and Nigeria stood side by side as the first concrete was poured. Television crews broadcast the ceremony across both countries. Children waved small Korean and Nigerian flags. The atmosphere was filled with hope. Professor Lee stood beside Hope. "We finally made it." Hope smiled. "No, they made it." She looked proudly toward Amara and Min-jae. Nearby, a group of children gathered around the old red brick sign by Grace and Ji-hoon. One little girl asked, "Will this brick always stay here?" Amara smiled warmly. "Yes." So every student remembers that great dreams often begin with one small act of kindness. The little girl nodded happily. "I'll remember." Min-jae looked at Amara. "You've already become a wonderful teacher." She laughed. "I'm still learning." "So am I." For the first time, he didn't feel like the lonely heir of a powerful family. He simply felt like a man helping to build something that would outlive him. The cherry blossoms drifted gently across the construction site, and high above, the morning sun shone brightly over a dream that had finally found its future. As workers prepared the land for the foundation's central library, a construction worker uncovered a small bronze plaque buried beneath the soil. It had never appeared on any blueprint. After cleaning away the dirt, the inscription became visible. It read, "The Horizon Foundation is dedicated to every child brave enough to dream beyond borders." Beneath the inscription were two familiar signatures, Grace Okoye, Kang Ji-hoon, and below them, there was one empty line, waiting for two new names to be engraved, Amara Okoye and Kang Min-jae. A gentle breeze swept across the construction site. Everyone gathered around the newly uncovered bronze plaque. The sunlight reflected off its weathered surface. Professor Lee carefully brushed away the remaining dust. His hands trembled. "This plaque, I remember designing it with Grace." Hope smiled softly, and Ji-hoon insisted there should always be space for the future. Amara looked at the empty line beneath the two signatures. "So, they planned this?" Professor Lee nodded. "Yes. They believed every generation should add its own chapter." Silence settled over the group. Min-jae looked at the plaque for a long moment. Then he quietly shook his head. "I don't think our names belong there." Everyone turned toward him. Amara looked surprised. "What do you mean?" He smiled gently. "My grandfather and your mother didn't build this dream for recognition. They built it for children." Professor Lee's eyes shone with pride. "You're beginning to sound exactly like Ji-hoon." Min-jae laughed softly. "I'll take that as the greatest compliment of my life." Hope stepped closer. "Then what should we write?" Min-jae looked toward the children visiting the construction site. They should decide. That afternoon, the workers gathered with the children beneath a large white tent. Sheets of paper and colored pencils were placed on every table. Mrs. Choi smiled warmly. "Today, you are all architects." The children laughed excitedly. One little girl drew a giant library. Another drew a football field where Korean and Nigerian children played together. A young boy drew a science laboratory. One child carefully sketched a music room filled with traditional Korean instruments beside African drums. Amara walked from table to table. "What are you building?" The little boy smiled. "A place where nobody feels alone." Her heart melted. She knelt beside him. "That's the most important room of all." Nearby, Min-jae watched quietly. Mr. Han walked beside him. "Young master, you've changed." Min-jae smiled. "I hope so." Mr. Han nodded. The chairman would be proud. As the afternoon came to an end, the children voted on what should be engraved beneath the plaque. After counting every vote, a little girl stepped forward carrying the winning sentence. Her voice was shy but clear. She read aloud, "This dream belongs to everyone who chooses kindness over fear." The entire crowd applauded. Professor Lee wiped away tears. "That is even better than anything we planned." The bronze plaque was carefully taken to the workshop. The craftsman promised to engrave the children's words exactly as written. Amara smiled. This foundation already has its first students. Later that evening, the construction site grew quiet again. The workers had gone home. Only the soft sounds of crickets and the distant city remained. Min-jae and Amara walked slowly through the grounds. Steel beams stretched toward the sky. Concrete pillars marked the beginning of classrooms yet to be built. "It already feels different," Amara whispered. It does. They stopped where the future library would stand. Min-jae looked toward the empty space. My grandfather dreamed of filling this room with books. Amara smiled. My mother dreamed of filling it with children. He looked at her. Together, they dreamed well. She nodded. They did. For a few moments, neither spoke. Then Min-jae reached into his jacket pocket. He removed the simple silver friendship ring, the same ring he had entrusted to Amara. You've kept your promise. She smiled as she placed it gently in his hand. And now it's time for you to keep yours. He looked at the ring thoughtfully. I don't want this to remain only a symbol of my grandfather. Amara tilted her head. What do you mean? Min-jae took a slow breath. I wanted to remind us that every promise we make from today must be worthy of the people who believed in us. He didn't kneel. He didn't rush. He simply held out his hand. Will you continue building this dream with me? Amara looked into his eyes. She saw no pressure, no expectation, only honesty. She smiled. I will. She placed her hand in his. And I promise something too. No matter how difficult the road becomes, we'll never let fear build higher walls than hope. Their hands remained together. Above them, the first lights of the nearly completed foundation glowed against the evening sky. Professor Lee watched quietly from a distance. Hope joined him. They're ready. Professor Lee smiled. Not because they have all the answers, but because they asked the right questions. Hope nodded. And because they chose love, without forgetting responsibility. Far away, a group of children laughed as they chased one another across the open field where the school courtyard would soon stand. Amara listened to their laughter. So this is what victory sounds like. Min-jae smiled warmly. No, this is what the future sounds like. 1 month later, the final steel beam was lifted into place. As the workers applauded, the project manager handed Min-jae a sealed invitation. Across the front, in elegant gold lettering, were the words, "You are warmly invited to the opening ceremony of the Horizon Foundation." The dream that had waited 26 years was finally ready to open its doors. 3 months later, the Horizon Foundation stood proudly beneath the clear Seoul sky. Gone were the broken walls. Gone were the abandoned construction materials. Gone were the painful memories that had haunted the land for 26 years. In their place stood a breathtaking campus. A modern library with walls of glass reflected the morning sunlight. Classrooms surrounded peaceful gardens filled with cherry blossom trees and African baobab saplings growing side by side. The music hall stood proudly near the center of the campus. The words engraved above its entrance read, "Knowledge builds bridges." Just as Grace Okoye had dreamed, just as Chairman Kang Ji-hoon had promised. People arrived from every direction. Government officials, teachers, business leaders, journalists, families, students, children from Korea and across Africa laughed excitedly as they walked through the front gate. Many had received scholarships through the newly restored Horizon Foundation. Professor Lee looked around with tears in his eyes. I never thought I would live to see this day. Hope gently held his hand. Neither did I. Mrs. Choi smiled warmly. But here we are. Backstage, Amara adjusted her elegant royal blue dress. It reflected both Nigerian elegance and modern Korean style. Her rich, deep ebony complexion glowed naturally in the morning light. Her slim figure, graceful posture, expressive warm brown eyes, and soft, natural, coily black hair styled into an elegant low bun made her look radiant. She wore simple pearl earrings and a delicate bracelet that had belonged to Grace Okoye. She looked calm, but her hands trembled slightly. Min-jae noticed. Nervous? She laughed softly. A little. So am I? He stood beside her wearing a perfectly tailored black suit with a crisp white shirt and dark blue tie. His handsome Korean features, kind eyes, confident posture, and gentle smile reflected the man he had become. Not simply a successful businessman, but a compassionate leader. Amara smiled. You clean up nicely. He laughed. I was about to say the same thing. Outside, the opening ceremony began. A choir made up of Korean and African children sang together. The audience rose to their feet. The sound echoed beautifully across the campus. Many people wiped away tears. When the music ended, Professor Lee stepped to the podium. His voice carried both pride and emotion. 26 years ago, two extraordinary people imagined a place where young minds from different cultures could learn together. They did not live to see this building completed. But today, their dream welcomes its first students. Thunderous applause filled the campus. Next, Amara walked onto the stage. She looked across the crowd. Thousands of faces smiled back at her. She took a slow breath. My mother used to tell me, a candle never loses its light by lighting another candle. She smiled warmly. Today, the Horizon Foundation becomes that candle. It belongs to every child who has ever believed that education can change a life. It belongs to every family that refused to give up. And it belongs to every person who chose hope over fear. The audience stood and applauded. Hope covered her face as tears flowed freely. Professor Lee whispered, Grace, can you see this? Finally, Min Jae approached the podium. He paused before speaking. My grandfather once told me, the measure of success is not how much you own, but how many lives become brighter because you lived. He looked toward the students seated in the front row. From today, you are the heart of this foundation. Dream boldly, study faithfully, lift one another, and when you succeed, remember to reach back and help someone else rise. The applause seemed endless. After the speeches, the first 12 scholarship students were invited onto the stage. 6 from Korea, 6 from Africa, just as Grace's original handwritten plan had described. One by one, each student received a scholarship certificate. Each child smiled with hope shining in their eyes. Amara and Min Jae looked at one another. Neither needed to speak. They both knew this was the moment their families had waited for. As the ribbon was cut, the great doors of the Horizon Foundation opened for the very first time. Children rushed inside laughing. The library filled with excited whispers. Teachers welcomed their new students. The dream had become reality. Professor Lee quietly reached into his pocket. He removed the small key to the time capsule buried beneath the foundation. He handed it to Amara. It still isn't time. She smiled. No, one day, when these children become adults, then they'll open it. Professor Lee nodded. Exactly. As the sun began to set, the campus glowed with warm golden light. Cherry blossom petals floated gently through the air. Baobab trees swayed softly in the breeze. 2 cultures, 1 future, 1 promise fulfilled. As the guests slowly departed, Min Jae quietly turned to Amara. There is one place I want to take you. She smiled curiously. Where? He reached into his pocket and held up the old silver friendship ring. The place where my grandfather first told me that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with a single act of kindness. Amara smiled, without another word. They walked into the evening together, toward the final chapter of their story. The evening sky over Seoul shimmered with shades of gold, pink, and deep blue. The opening ceremony had ended. The laughter of children still echoed softly across the Horizon Foundation campus. One by one, the guests departed. The reporters packed away their cameras. The musicians played their final notes. Peace settled gently over the grounds. Min Jae looked at Amara. Come with me? She smiled. I trust you. Together, they walked through the quiet garden. The path was lined with cherry blossom trees. At the end of the path stood the oldest tree on the estate. Its branches stretched wide, covered in soft pink blossoms dancing in the evening breeze. Amara looked around. This place, it feels familiar. Min Jae nodded. It should. My grandfather brought me here every spring. He said this tree had witnessed every important promise our family ever made. He smiled gently. And today, I wanted it to witness another. They stood beneath the blossoms. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was peaceful, the kind of silence shared by two people who had walked through storms together. Min Jae reached into his jacket. He carefully removed the simple silver ring, the same ring that had belonged to Chairman Kang Ji-hoon. He looked at it for a moment before speaking. When I first gave this to you, it represented trust. Today, it still represents trust. But it also represents something more. Amara's heart began to race. She listened quietly. I spent years believing success meant standing alone. Then you arrived. You reminded me that kindness is strength. You reminded me that hope can survive even after 26 years. And he smiled warmly. You reminded me what home feels like. Tears filled Amara's eyes. She remembered the letter, the one they had promised not to open until they had become each other's home. She whispered softly, I think it's time. Min-jae nodded. I think so too. He took the unfinished letter from his pocket. They carefully unfolded it together. The paper had grown fragile with age. Chairman Kang Ji-hoon's familiar handwriting greeted them once more. My dear Min-jae and Amara, if you are reading this letter, then you have discovered something more valuable than success. You have discovered a companion who makes you a better person. Amara smiled through her tears. Min-jae squeezed her hand gently. The letter continued. Love is not measured by grand speeches. It is measured by quiet acts of faithfulness. By choosing each other again and again, especially on difficult days. Professor Lee's words echoed in their hearts. Family is built by love, loyalty, and the promises we keep. The final lines of the letter read, Do not spend your lives trying to become extraordinary. Spend your lives helping ordinary people discover the extraordinary gifts already inside them. If you do that, you will honor Grace. You will honor me. And the Horizon Foundation will never stop changing the world. The letter ended with two signatures. Grace Okoye, Kang Ji-hoon. Amara carefully folded the letter. She held it close to her heart. They finished it together. Min-jae smiled. Even after all these years, they're still teaching us. A gentle breeze carried dozens of cherry blossom petals around them. The world seemed to stand still. Min-jae looked into Amara's eyes. Amara? She smiled softly. Yes. There is one promise I want to make. He took both of her hands. I promise to protect your dreams as carefully as my own. I promise to celebrate your victories. I promise to stand beside you when life becomes difficult. And I promise that the Horizon Foundation will never become more important than the people we love. Amara's tears flowed freely. She answered with a gentle smile. And I promise to remind you to rest when you work too hard. I promise to laugh with you, to encourage you, to tell you the truth, even when it is difficult. And wherever life leads us, I promise that you will never walk alone. For a moment, they simply smiled at one another. Then, Min-jae gently slipped the silver ring onto Amara's finger. It was not a symbol of wealth. It was not a symbol of power. It was a symbol of trust, hope, and a promise shared between two families. Just then, a soft applause came from behind them. They turned. Professor Lee, Hope, Mrs. Choi, Mr. Han, and the first 12 scholarship students stood smiling beneath the lanterns. Mrs. Choi laughed. We tried not to interrupt, but we couldn't miss this moment. Everyone laughed warmly. One of the little girls stepped forward. She handed Amara and Min-jae a framed drawing. It showed a cherry blossom tree growing beside a mighty baobab tree. Their branches intertwined high above the ground. At the bottom were the words, different roots, one future. Amara hugged the little girl. This is beautiful. The child smiled. So are your hearts. The stars slowly appeared above Seoul. The Horizon Foundation glowed with warm lights. Inside its classrooms, new dreams were already beginning. And beneath the oldest cherry blossom tree, two families finally became one. Final teaser. Their love story had found its beginning. But the Horizon Foundation story was only just beginning. Every child who walked through its gates would carry a new dream. Every graduate would become another bridge between Africa and Korea. And somewhere beyond the reach of time, Grace Okoye and Chairman Kang Ji-hoon smiled, because hope had kept its promise. Thank you for listening and watching this story. If you enjoyed the story, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel.